The game itself just extremely infuriating. To start off offensively, to take it down the length of the field and stall out literally on the half-yard line with two consecutive plays, just and then to happen again in the second half, just inexcusable, very frustrating. In 15 years of coaching, never been in this position where we can't gain a half a yard. Just absolutely insane.
Your two seems to be doing very well. I love watching your quarterback, man. I love him. What I know you're nodding your head. You can agree. So what did you see in this kid, Dylan Raiola, that you knew, like, I got to get him, coach?
I think the biggest thing is, like, when you talk to him, I mean, he's immensely talented with no ego. He has a lot of pride, but no ego. And so you could feel that right off the bat, and you just kind of gravitate towards him.
It's Fox College Football Friday. Freshman phenom Dylan Raiola looks to prove the hype is legit. Man, did he drop it in? As he leads Nebraska against Illinois. Fox College Football Friday kicks off at 8 Eastern.
Live from 50th and Capitol Avenue in the Big O. This is Mornings with Sharp and Handley on 1620 The Zone, 1620thezone.com, and 1620 The Zone TV. Now here's Gary, Nick, and Jimmy.
All right, somebody get Rich Eisen a pronunciation guide. We had Ray, it's Rye.
Ray. No one said Ree.
He still only played 3 games in college. It'll be probably another game or 2 or a month before he becomes a one-name guy. Like, people don't even attempt to name the quarterback in Tennessee. It's just Nico. Not even a try. Say that guy Tennessee. Nico is great.
It's not always the sign of a great thing, too, because a lot of people were saying DJU. Remember that was actually a cool thing. Yeah. And now it's like, well, we just simply cannot say his last name. It has nothing to do with how good he is.
A lot of L's in his name.
You know, something crazy about DJU is, he was ranked higher than Bryce Young.
Yeah.
They were in the same recruiting class.
Yeah.
Wow.
He's a big deal.
Who would have thought that Bryce Young would be benched before DJU? Wow. NFL is a whole different game.
Yeah, sure is.
Yeah. You know what? When I was thinking about Bryce Young getting benched in Carolina, and that was only after 19 games, I am so happy this morning for my Giant fans, Richie and Robin, because Daniel Jones still hasn't been benched, and he's about to play his 65th game as a starter.
Yeah.
Different world.
There's probably some Giants fans that wouldn't mind seeing that happen, but your options are your options right now.
You thought you could tank because you're going to get Dak, and then Dak stays in Dallas.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That's okay. Arch Manning will look good when he fights the system and gets out early. Yeah. All right, welcome in, everybody. Good morning. It is a hump day. We'll help you get over your hump game. Mornings with Sharp and Handley. Jimmy is back in studio this morning. We're here until 10. I was trying to educate myself, especially on the drive in. I hit the scan button. So I'll listen to the show that is on before us.
Mm-hmm.
Less response when Clay Travis used to have his show on, the Outkick show.
Yeah.
No, and it was just a sports show. He wasn't.
Yeah.
He stuck to sports.
They talked about sports and then animals.
Okay. I can get behind both.
Like Animal Kingdom was a big deal. We get a lot of responses because people didn't like Clay.
Yeah.
But
he's polarizing.
Like we get nothing on the show that is before us. But usually when I get in the car, 1620s on the radio. But then if they're in a commercial, I like to scan. I like to hit my music stations. I'm a big fan of our guys next door in Sweet 98.
Always interested what you find on the way in.
Ended up on a news talk station that is not in this building. And I bet
I know which one.
I always want to learn something. Okay. I'm always trying to gain knowledge.
Mm-hmm.
So I've been reading up on Diddy. So Diddy appears to be
in trouble?
A little bit of trouble.
Because of freak-offs?
Well, that.
Got his freak on?
I don't mean to laugh about it. I was reading a lot of this stuff yesterday because I'm like, what the hell is going on?
And I thought, man, I went to a rave once and they had they played a freak off, a freak out. I was like, that's awesome. Yeah. Much different. You know why?
A lot different than freak out.
So one of the things they seized from P. Diddy's house in Miami and L.A. were 1,000 bottles of baby oil and lubricant.
Yeah.
Now, there is nothing that says you are guilty if you have 1,000 bottles of baby oil and lubricant just sticking around. No. Maybe you got kids. Maybe you like to tan. Maybe you got ashy skin. I don't know. Not going to judge. But this is not trending in the right direction for old P. Diddy. Okay?
Not so much.
But I was listening to this news talk station. Again, I want to be informed. I want to learn things. And they had a soundbite from his lawyer.
Okay.
I'm sure highly paid lawyer,
Yeah.
guy that has fought these kind of things before.
Mhm.
Maybe when you go in the phone book, you'll look up which lawyers fight freak-offs. Okay. I mean, if I grab the Omaha phone book,
I'm not going to say
like
there's a lot.
if I call their friends at Baylor Law and say, "Hey, man, I got involved in a freak-off. Can you get me out?" Are they going to be like, "Yeah, we have somebody that is an expert in that.
Like, yeah, in fact, he just won the most recent freak-off case.
Let me pass your information on to Will, and he'll call you back."
How serious would you say your freak-off is compared to your normal freak-off, though? Because we do need to know that before we
Well,
sit
I
down
don't want to
and
make light of the situation because these
Yes.
allegations are not good.
Yes, they're
But I
not.
learned something new. That so when you have 1,000 bottles of baby oil and lubricant does not immediately bring to mind what you think it does, according to his lawyer. They said, he goes, people are going to think that having lubricant is guilty, that lubricant always means bad things. And so I'm going to look differently from here on out at bottles of lubricant and not think of what I used to think about, that they're not necessarily a guilty pleasure.
Most were told you were thoughtful if you had that.
Well, you can use, lubricant can be very loosely used. WD-40 is considered to be a lubricant. I don't think anybody's using that for pleasure as opposed to maybe a squeaky door or noisy door. Or maybe you've got some projects at home where you're putting, say, some little bit more stubborn screws into something.
I think
that
you
would
need
be lubricant for that.
Instead of a freak off, I think that would be the wheels would be off if you use WD-40.
Yeah, then we're talking in a whole new spectrum of this entire freak off situation.
So that's how my morning started. I've learned that just because you are,
I feel like I've been gone a
just
month.
because the authorities seize 1,000 bottles of lubricant
That's
does not
expensive.
mean that it's what you think it's for.
Yeah. Yeah, it's
I
we
usually only had one.
there are just certain things that we automatically imply this or that when we hear, a certain product. I think when you hear lubricant or lube, a lot of people like to go there with the sexual innuendo, but sometimes
You think that when you take your car to Jiffy?
yeah, exactly.
You're
Like a
my car is
Yeah.
about to have
I was just going to say the people
7 seconds of heaven.
the people in the auto industry think
still
of
play
lube in
that
a
game?
much different way.
I don't know.
I think
You talk to more youth than I do these days.
Spin the bottle. Well, yeah, is that the
that's God.
It wasn't 7 seconds, was it? That's pretty short.
I knew they were taking advantage of me when I was a kid. It's 7 minutes in heaven.
Yes.
Oh, yeah, Teen Wolf. I learned that from that. Yeah. Boof.
7 minutes.
God!
7 minutes in heaven. 7 seconds.
seconds.
All right, Gary, you're done.
I know I'm done.
It was 7. I thought it was 7 minutes. No, it's always been 7 seconds. Oh, okay. If you guys say so.
Man,
Get something to eat now.
I got short change when I was a little kid. Maybe that's why Jenny Layden and I didn't get together in 7th grade. Everybody else got 7 minutes with her. I got 7 seconds.
Yep.
7 second.
There's only so many things you can do in 7 seconds.
Yeah, well,
I mean,
yeah.
even Noel Lyles can't finish in 7 seconds.
Even Mahomes can't drive the Chiefs down the field.
I
for
mean,
a
I
field
want to
goal
say
7
the
seconds.
obvious,
Needs
too.
13.
Sometimes,
You're right.
Sometimes it's not within your control. It just happens in
All
7
right.
seconds.
Good morning, everybody.
It
How we
is.
doing? Damn Rich Eisen. It's Rye, not Ray.
Get
it right.
The moral of the story is, yeah.
Get it right. Welcome in. We are off and running. And the more I think about the game on Friday, as we are a day closer to the young man who is now a grown man that wore the Nebroins
Yeah.
shirt.
Yeah.
Which I know why they did that combo, because the letters, they wanted to match up the letters.
Yeah. Illabraska would have been weird.
Illabraska is better.
I do.
Rolls
It's
off the
easier
tongue.
to
Yeah,
say. Yeah,
Illabraska should have been better.
Yeah.
Illabraska is more cool than Nebroins.
Yeah,
But-
Nebroin sounds like something you'd order from a deli.
But we're a day closer to Tim Brando waxing poetic about this kid and talking about his political beliefs and who is he going to vote for in November.
Who, the Nebroins kid? Or Dylan?
Tim Brando is quite interesting on Twitter.
Yeah.
He is one of the rare.
Yeah.
He dips his toe in it.
He's one of the rare broadcasters, like high
More than his
profile
toes.
broadcasters that is just Citizen Tim. And then on Saturday he's talking about Frost and Saban being very similar.
Yep.
But Tim Brando will be on the call for the 400th sellout. But as we get closer to that, and that kid gets his day, which, I mean, there's a good story. I think about a couple years ago, somebody went and did a story on him. It's kind of a cool story. Is the more I look at this game, and it was brought up yesterday, like right at the show, Out of Breath Brian. We were talking about the spread and what Nebraska would do. The closer we get, I think for the fourth straight game, Nebraska covers.
Okay.
I don't.
Where are we at now?
It's 8.5.
Yeah. Oh yeah, they cover.
So I don't know. I'm looking at Illinois and watch the entire KU game. I think what is happening here is a combination of two things when people look at this game. One, you got to keep in mind, that play is going to be jacked on Friday night.
Yep.
And you got a defense that's going to get Bayor and Butler back full time, and they add some juice. And there is no other unit at Nebraska this year that feeds off the crowd more than that defense. Yeah. And, man, they lean into it, and that defense gives the crowd energy and vice versa. And Nebraska's defense is going to go against a quarterback because here's where I think people I talk to and listeners and the people we interact with are looking at this game. They're like, oh, Illinois' got a number in front of their name. Well, I said on Monday, they're ranked because of default. Okay. And you can even convince me that maybe Nebraska shouldn't be ranked. But Nebraska, if they're not 25th, they're probably 26th. But looking at this matchup and looking at Illinois and not looking at a number next to their name, or I'll give them credit, the fact that they have played well in Lincoln. Yep. There's a number in front of their name. And then there's like, you know what? Still not convinced about Nebraska. Well, I'm here to convince you that I think Nebraska will cover. I'm not going to wait till Friday to have suspense. Let's give the pick. I have the vibe. I wake up this morning and I go, you know what? This feels like a Nebraska win. This feels like a Nebraska cover. And I wonder, Luke Altmaier's had a nice year, but why is 70% of his passing yards against Central Michigan and Eastern Illinois? Didn't throw a touchdown pass against KU, so his 2 touchdown passes have been against those teams.
That's fair.
Just everybody look at this. Just take a step back. Look what Nebraska does defensively. Look what Illinois does offensively. We can talk about the other side of the ball, but that's why I feel that this is a cover. And I woke up this morning. I had my vibe. I thought I'd say it. You can join in the party if you'd like, or you'd like to wait and go, I'll keep it suspenseful. This is going to be a close game, maybe like 21-18. It's just going to be field goals. Illinois is going to kick 6 field goals. Now, they use 2 field goal kickers, and they're not bad.
That would be comical, though.
All right, so I'm on the board. I'm not waiting. We tell people to get in first with their picks.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm in early. I think Nebraska covers and wins on Friday night.
I've never worried that Nebraska loses this game. For me, it is more about what Illinois is right now. And like you, I've seen them kind of a little bit more in limited capacity, but I have a tough time getting over last year's game because there are still a lot of the same guys that were a part of that game where, that game, given the comedy of errors that Nebraska made in the second half of late in that game too, where it's like, hey, we're not putting this game away. So if y'all want to hang around and you want to get into this fight, go ahead. They couldn't do it. Like Illinois, and it wasn't necessarily Illinois made a comedy of errors. It was more Nebraska did there in the third and fourth quarter that Illinois had zero response. And so I know some of the hesitation for people is the history that Nebraska has in Big Ten play. And that's still some proving that this team will have to do. But didn't they do that last year against this team with essentially the same personnel?
So Nebraska never trailed last year, right?
No.
Who'd Nebraska have at quarterback?
Heinrich Harburg.
He ain't playing quarterback on Friday night.
They're up 17-7 at half.
Thank you. So you're saying your hesitation because of Nebraska?
No. No, my hesitation is what is Illinois exactly right now? Because we're about to find out.
I'm
not.
3-0.
I'm not.
I don't think they're like their 22 team.
Right. And
I don't think they run the ball and stop the run as good as they did that year because that was a good football team in 22.
Mm-hmm.
They don't really stop the run as well.
Well, there was a
run against them. A lot.
And so I'm glad you bring that up too. The 22 team compared to what you saw last year still had Caden Fegan at running back. He wasn't Chase Brown. Luke Altmaier and it's been well documented this week too. Turned the ball over a lot more, but he threw one pick in that game. So it wasn't, again, like Luke Altmaier had all of these major disastrous plays last year against Nebraska as well. It was Nebraska, as we've talked about. They were very basic but physical in that game, and that was more than enough. And they don't even have Isaiah Williams this year, who was, a threat. Yeah. They had Pat Bryant. So that's my whole thing is the more I look at Illinois, and based on the one game against Kansas, because that was when I saw them play too, is nothing about that team says, well, they're a lot better than they were a year ago. But there's a lot about Nebraska says, yeah, they're better than they were a year ago. So it's hard to say.
Yeah, you sound a little hesitant.
Yeah,
you sound like you have PTSD Nebraska.
And that's probably the only thing. But then
dive into the waters.
But I do, because I look back at last year, I'm like,
take your little floaty off.
For proving the Illinois thing, just belly flopping in there and saying,
get crazy.
Didn't they already exercise that last year against Illinois? In a game where, again, they did things that would normally let a team back in, and Illinois had no response. They were shut out in the second half.
Jimmy, are you sensing some hesitation, though, in Nick's voice? He's trying to talk himself in and out of what I said that Nebraska will win and cover.
They'll win. I have no problem with that. And it does. It feels like a 13.
You think Nebraska's a good football team?
Yes, I do. Yes, I do. I feel
I'm
like
going off of what you just said about Illinois.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
I feel like they're a better team than they were a year ago, and I think Illinois is pretty much the same.
27-10.
So, and that was a 20-7 road victory last year. So
with Heinrich Harburg at quarterback in an offense that had been discombobulated.
Yep. If that's all how it is, this game should be a 31-13 game.
Ooh. I was thinking about 31-10.
Did we just talk him into that?
He got it. I like it.
Like when you started the car up, I thought, ooh, I'm just going to drive down Dodge. And then as you gotten closer, I think we've convinced you to jut off and drive on Farm and go by Warren's house, give it a honk, and then get back on Dodge.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. I like it.
You may have.
I like that.
I like this.
31-13.
Yeah. So this was my whole thing, even this week, listening to what the players and coaches talked about yesterday, what Matt Rule talked about, but also, and this is where sometimes watching the Big Ten Network, everybody's a good team on the Big Ten Network, right? I mean, everybody's got a good shot.
Yes.
Everybody's looking good right now. So you really do have to just kind of stop and say, like I always give you credit on this. You say this, don't overthink it. What has changed from both of these teams from a year ago in a game that Nebraska just ho-humly physically out-physicaled Illinois?
Nebraska's more physical and they're better on defense. That's scary.
And a better quarterback.
Huh?
As essentially
the
same
I'm being
team
too conservative.
where there are two guys that I thought actually could have hurt Nebraska last year in Isaiah Williams and Reggie Love. You don't have them. Now, I'm not saying that some of the young guys that weren't part of that game last year that maybe could contribute to Illinois, but the guys that you've seen get the most play in those key roles, they were part of last year's game. Pat Bryant, I mean, and I think Pat Bryant's good, but they neutralized him last year too. Just saying.
Look what we did there.
I'm excited.
I think that you didn't want to say that. I think we've talked you into jumping onto to team Jimmy and Gary.
I wanted to say cover, no cover.
Okay.
They would win.
That's fair.
Would they cover or will they not cover?
That's fair.
Because
it's not like I'm predicting a huge blowout. I mean, it's 8.5. It could be 31-20 and, you know.
Yeah, 20-10. Would be like, man, they went in and just destroyed. No,
you're going to Hooters and Council Bluffs and you're celebrating because they have good Wi-Fi in the parking lot.
You would know.
Well, not at that particular Hooters.
Oh, okay.
I haven't been to Hooters in a long time.
There's something about just sitting in the parking lot at Hooters but not going in. I feel like they probably call the cops on you. Like there's somebody's doing something very weird out there.
Tying it back to the beginning of the segment.
Just get on the internet. You don't need to go sit in the parking lot of Hooters. What do you think you're going to see at the parking lot of Hooters?
I don't know.
Ooh, it's pretty cool because at the top of the hour, the waitresses come outside.
They do a dance.
I know when they
what
change.
What are we doing?
I know when they change the trash.
Yeah.
No, you just said being in the Hooters parking lot. Because the Wi-Fi is better, and it made me think of some live betting.
Is this a vaudeville routine? What are they doing?
Like, wow, I showed up in the Hooters parking lot. I can put my bets in.
I truly believe that one day in the state of Nebraska, that recreational cannabis will be legal. We'll drink beer at Memorial Stadium. We'll have mobile gaming.
We may not all be here.
Yeah, we may not all be here, but at one point it will, and it will ruin the stories of people that have their spots in Council Bluffs that they go just so they could place a bet.
I know many people that are Omaha residents that are now Council Bluffs Hy-Vee shoppers because you kill two birds with one stone right there.
So
we should have taken the Friday show
I'm going to give you a little thing here. If you ever want to do this, because, sometimes just a head nod, like a,
oh yeah, like I'm here.
Like if you know,
Mm-hmm.
It's Saturday morning. And because I like a breakfast spot over there, it's not necessarily like go to the Hy-Vee parking lot on Broadway.
Yeah.
They have the breakfast.
You maybe slide in and you get one of the spots that's closer to the street, and then the next guy pulls up next to you, and everybody has their phone out. Yeah, I know what you're doing. You're not checking your honey-do list of what to go to the grocery store. You're like, man, could I make it a 3-team parlay on FanDuel, and should I take that odds boost?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
That sheet of paper that sometimes has the groceries on it that actually has the games and the spread too, and you're just like,
okay. I'm not here to convince other people this is a free-flowing show, lubricant or not. You can make up your own mind.
It's not a freak off.
But I don't even know what that is.
I kind of don't either. It was sort of explained in the indictment. It was kind of explained in the indictment, and it kind of wasn't.
Nick, we've seen pictures of your younger days, your bachelor days.
We never called it a freak off, though.
Well, that's good because then you might be indicted.
Right.
And I apologize. I don't mean to make light of people that have been involved in freak offs.
Yes, this is obviously a thing.
But the lubricant thing.
There's questions.
This guy was like, don't immediately assume that if you have lubricant, it means a bad thing. So I'm like, I'll have an open mind.
He was opening up an auto repair shop.
I like to have an open mind, but it just the stuff that's coming out doesn't look. Yeah. I don't think he's going to be cutting any music anytime soon.
This segment presented by KY.
But
there's no single coming out.
Couple of things. One, remember, this is the first road game for Illinois. It's a night game. It's a Friday night game.
Mm-hmm.
Place going to be jacked. And then, do you think? I'm not trying to sway your opinion, even though I think we did a good job there earlier. Do you think that Illinois, in their current setup, you mentioned one of the running backs, which I still think they don't utilize him as much in Fegan, that they will run for more than 150 yards on Nebraska's defense?
So,
no, yes or no?
I do.
Ooh,
I do. Yeah.
Whoa, because I was going to give you the nugget that in the last 17 games, when Illinois does not run for 150 yards, they are 3-14.
When they do?
When they do not.
I know, but when they do?
When they do, they are not 3-14.
They're not 3-14. Because I think I'm not trying to use last week's game as the end-all be-all example of things, but when you can collectively rush for, what was it, 140 for UNI? Sorry, Northern Iowa.
Mm-hmm.
Was there ever a major threat in that game? I have no doubts that Illinois can sustain some long drives, that can do some things like that. We talked about will they get in a situation where they're throwing the ball over 30 times, which would be great for Nebraska. I think that this is where I will say Brett Bielema is a smart coach, and I think they understand that that's a recipe for disaster. Now, if Nebraska's offense does their part and they pull away early, then you have no choice. But yeah, I think they'll be committed to trying to run the football. And I think you can get a couple of plays here and there that collectively over 4 quarters, even without Nebraska feeling overly threatened, that they can get to 150. Yeah.
This will also be Luke Altmaier's 5th road start. They don't have a lot of experience playing in these situations.
And it's going to be a great atmosphere.
Yeah, off the chains, as the kids say. They participate in 7 minutes of heaven.
There you go. I got it.
Jake says you go to Council Bluffs because you like a breakfast place. Yeah, and I read the Playboy for the articles.
They did have good articles.
You know what? Very underrated.
Good writers.
I mean, there's a lot of things we've covered here in the first segment. Very underrated was Playboy's coverage of college football.
Yes.
Oh, yeah. The girls of the Big Ten, the girls of the Pac-12.
No, I'm talking about they had a breakdown.
I knew what you meant, but I thought
they had a breakdown. Like they would have they had like the All-American team.
Oh, yeah.
They had like
the Playboy
really good
All-Americans,
articles that you would read, like at Fantasies, like when they had the magazines on the shelves and you'd read them, you have to take it out of the plastic, but you read the article and you'd be like, oh, I'm better informed about college football.
And then Phil Steele ran that section out of business for them. They're like, maybe we should just stick
And
to what we
maybe.
know.
I never thought of that.
I think magazines got run out, period. They still do exist. Like go to Target and they've got all those magazines.
Is Guns and Ammo still out there?
Don't know.
Okay.
I don't think I've ever purchased Guns and Ammo.
I just always remember seeing that right next to my Sports Illustrated when I go to the magazine rack.
And a fish.
There'd always be because if you're going to Sports Illustrated, clearly you also wanted to get a fishing magazine or a Guns and Ammo magazine.
Guns to shoot fish.
Like, can I interest you in 2 or 3 magazines here too? Maybe your Inside Sports or your Sport magazine.
When's the last time either one of you read a full magazine?
Phil Steele.
I don't think that counts.
I didn't even read the full part of that because that's a lot of content. I wasn't looking at the MAC teams in that one too. It's been
because I still get Sports Illustrated, and I think a little bit of it is I'm too lazy to cancel the subscription. It's like $99 a year. It just keeps showing up every other week.
Yeah, you don't want to do it,
and probably unless like the most recent one was the NFL preview, and so I think I read through part of it. Yeah, it's been a while.
Dr. Z.
But it's like Sports Illustrated. I used to, when I was a kid, you get it, and you get it on Thursday.
Yep.
And if the mailman was a little bit late, you might come on Friday, and you're like, come on.
Yeah.
But by like Friday morning, you would have looked through all of Sports Illustrated.
Well, better question is, when's the last time you got excited to get certain magazine in the mail? And for me, that was ESPN the magazine because I thought, first of all, it's bigger. So it kind of stood out, but they had really good features. And then if you're someone who liked to cut out pictures and put them on your locker or something, they had really good photos
Time
as well.
And place.
Life was better back then before Bin Laden.
I got to bring this up. Omaha says this on the stream just because this is funny, because there's 2 things that are funny about this. He is quoting a song that I think we all know and probably really enjoyed, but also the fact that they were here with the Omaha Symphony, and that is Cypress Hill. Thought Cypress Hill was last night. This is insane in the brain. Not covering, meaning Nebraska, not covering. But that's not even the part that I was amused by. Were they here
last night?
I was amused that, yes.
The Steelhouse.
Yeah, so they perform. I was informed about this weekend that Cypress Hill does this, where they perform with local city symphonies. And I just can only imagine what that's like, how that sounds. I really wanted to go last night.
Man, just hearing that brings back so many memories. Strangely,
but with the symphony
offset.
I mean, it's one thing to hear a Cypress Hill banger, but with the symphony doing Insane in the Brain, it'd be amazing.
Mm-hmm.
Odd, yet very, very cool.
Damn.
Hey.
Thanks, Omaha.
Blabber to watch that belly get fatter.
Put it on a diet. Don't try it.
Fat boy on a diet.
Oh, yeah. Fat boy on a diet. Don't try it.
I'll jack your, what's
butt,
that word?
Your butt like a looter in a riot.
My blank's fat like a sumo, slamming that.
A-word.
Leaving your face in the grass. I don't take.
I
don't take do-low lightly.
Yep.
Punk just jealous because they can't outright me. Or kick that style wicked wild. Wow. Happy face. Never see me smile. Rip that mainframe. I'll explain. Like me is going insane. Insane in the membrane. Insane in the brain.
With the violin in the background.
Insane in the membrane. Insane in the brain.
With the violin in the background.
Can you imagine some of the older folk from the Omaha Symphony?
Well, that was a lot of the intrigue for me too. I knew there's certain lyrics that, and then having the symphony crowd and the folks that are in the symphony as well being like, So are they full throttle with the lyrics as is? That's what I would be very curious.
I used to think way back in the day, when I wore the flared jeans and rocked wristbands and had fake tats, that House of Pain and Cypress Hill were the same.
Oh, yeah, no.
I maybe had a little hearing thing.
Wow.
It happens. All right. Okay. The lineup for the show this morning, we're going to pack it up. We're going to pack it in. So let me begin and tell you that the rooferees at John Higgins Weather Guard bring us the daily lineup. David Cobb from CBSSports.com. We'll talk some college football coming up at 8 o'clock. Jay Moore will be here because he comes to win. Battle me. That's a sin. So he'll be in at 9, fresh off his appearance on Tuesday on Big Red Wrap-Up. He'll break down what he saw against Northern Iowa and what's to begin in the real season. And then Brandon Vogel who won't ever slack up. Punk, you better back up. And
It's
you
no
better
blubber
check
or
out
blabber.
Counter Read this morning. It comes out at 6. Try and play a role. And the whole crew will act up. That's what they do at Counter Read. Brandon's going to bring the goods. He'll be on at 9:40. That is the lineup. That
you know
is
what?
brought to you
That is why I
by,
don't mess with the 4-0.
Hey, Muggs.
Bro, I got to maintain.
Hey, let the funk flow. Someone's talking junk. I believe he's next to me. Yo, I'll bust you in the eye, and then I'll take that punk's hoe. I think that was on a T-shirt that was sold outside the
I was just thinking that.
Well, there was part of it. Yeah.
Letting me know that I'm in Lincoln, Nebraska.
I take Cash App or Venmo. Yep.
Can you just say
no?
Were you here the other day off? You got okay. One quick thing here because this is just completely off the rails, and that's fine because Brett Bielema's coming to town.
It's Bert.
I got to be respectful. A good friend of mine is his director of football operations.
Oh, that's right.
Mm-hmm.
He was the
he was supposed to get you Brett Bielema at Big Ten Media
sports
Days.
information director at FGCU when we had Dunk City and made the run.
Yeah, and Brett still turned us down.
Brett hired him at Arkansas. I loves Brett. Yeah, so I maybe afterwards I'll call him Bert.
Okay.
But today I'll call him Brett.
It'll be Brett for a couple days
until Saturday.
So there was the duffel bags are back away from Memorial Stadium selling T-shirts.
Mm-hmm.
Like
I was here Monday.
Like the guy had Nebraska football is back. F around, find out.
Yep.
GBR.
Yep. Saw that.
Nick saw the other one that was very popular, but you have to do it in the cadence of the guy that was selling that shirt.
Okay. He goes because this was. As we were leaving, you could hear it even blocks away. Was say no to the hoe. I take Cash App and Venmo. And then it would repeat. Same thing over and over. And even a member of our group,
You
a
make me
female,
want to go to the game Friday.
in our group said, well, I at least respect his vocal cords because that has to be taking a beating right now because he was projecting the entire time. And we could hear him for a good 5 minutes during our
It's a
walk.
warm evening, too. So
Did you say
He was committed.
Did you say as you walk by, man, I'll hit that bong and break you off something?
I'm out the 9 card.
Yes, I'm the pilot of the ship. If I get with the ultraviolet dream,
Yes.
hide from the red light beam.
Beams, yes.
Now do you believe in the unseen? Look, but don't make your eyes strain. Like me is going
insane.
Insane.
Insane to the membrane.
I want to hear people that went to that show.
I know. That's the only reason I brought that comment up is because
Steelhouse is growing on me. That's
I
a
felt
really
like
good venue downtown.
we brought up the Cage the Elephant and Young the Giant, and he said, "Oh, you know what? If you like them so much, maybe they should tour together." Yeah, I was just talking about them touring together yesterday. How we didn't mention Gary had a moment yesterday. Where is the Gary? You paying attention? Nope.
I was kind of loco.
You were a little bit loco. How we didn't bring this up yesterday too, because I knew this was happening and totally forgot because I have so many questions about what that would be like. People who were there, what did it sound like? Were they verbatim with every lyric? And you bring up the other question: how is the audience, maybe the more symphony stodgy crowd that is listening to that, like, didn't know we could still say certain things like that?
Did they say, "It has been a pleasure, Mr. Cypress Hill, performing with you"? All right, we got to take a break. We'll dive more into Nebraska, Illinois. Also, there is something unique about old GBR that must be pointed out today because something will happen tonight, something will happen Friday that is very unique to GBR. I will tell you that when we come back. But Bruin Steve, who is fired up because NHL training camps are starting, he's got to figure out who his goalie is in Boston. He says a statement game of the defense and an offense gets rolling 38-7.
Okay.
If it's 38-7 and 15 performs well,
you're buying one of those shirts.
You're gonna be watching game day on Saturday morning because they are. You think that what they do for Deion Sanders, man, they might swallow Dylan Raiola whole if Nebraska looks good on Friday night, and that's the standalone game.
Tying it all back together. Not even talking about the Huskers.
Mm-hmm.
Isn't it nice to have a coach that doesn't claim victim mentality all the time?
Oh, yeah.
All right, mornings with Sharp and Handley. Jimmy on 1620 The Zone. This actually be a good name for a morning show.
Just toss that ham in the frying pan like spam. Slam. Damn, I feel like the son of Sam.
I want to watch Bullworth now.
Lights are blinking. I'm thinking it's all over when I go out drinking. All right, sir.
I could keep going.
Nice.
Would
you like to just turn this into a radio karaoke? It is a Wednesday.
It's just one of those rare songs that I remember from middle school and high school that I just listen to it all the time.
Going to cover.
Takes you right back there. I get it.
I think you're
until 6:11.
David Cobb will join us coming up at 8. We'll ask David if the only way for Florida State to get off the schneid is they find the guy and he eats the poop.
Oh, yeah.
I believe that until the guy eats the poop, Florida State's cursed.
You might be right.
Yeah.
Okay, so Friday night in Memorial Stadium is the 400th sellout.
Mm-hmm.
This is not the week to nitpick how this streak has continued. Not the week. You can do that on Saturday.
Yeah.
But the first 3 home games have been packed. There have not been any empty pockets. The students have shown up. It has been loud.
Yep.
Okay, it has been loud. It has been engaging. And it has been a symbiotic relationship between the players on the field and the fans. It's been really cool for the first 3 games. It kind of harkens back to some days where you felt like you had an impact if you were in the stands. Bottom line is, Friday night, it is the 400th sellout. It is special to a lot of people. We'll maybe do this on Friday. People can share memories. I will say this about that stadium. And there are flaws in that stadium, but it's ours, and it's over 100 years old, and it may not be the most comfortable place to be. And, you would rather have a urinal than a trough. There's a lot of things about the place. But the one thing that always holds true about Memorial Stadium is very rarely do you meet a fellow Nebraskan that doesn't have a story about going to a game there. That's friggin' special.
Yeah.
You remember the first game you went to where your parents took you or your grandparents, or you took your kids, or you were there where you were at your exact seat for a moment. That's a cool deal, that we made it to 400.
Yeah.
They're going to make it to 401. Rutgers is sold out. Now, the UCLA game in Wisconsin have less than 700, but there's, people are excited and, they're going. But hey, people that have been in the first 3 games, kudos to you, and it will be loud. It won't be Colorado loud, but it'll be engaged on Friday night. But I was thinking about this because there will be another atmosphere that'll be juiced, not like Juice Williams.
See what you did.
It's Illinois week.
Yeah.
Damn right.
Tonight, because number 2 Stanford and number 5 Nebraska play at the palace that is a shrine to volleyball, the Bob Devaney Sports Center. I used to think it was a place where Jason DeRusso went to tear down the basketball hoop. Not the case.
Good call. Some of my best state basketball memories are there too.
You know why I remember that moment?
Why?
Because I think it was DeRusso. I think it was against Tennessee. Where he dunked the basketball.
And then the whole thing collapses. Yeah.
I was on a date.
Oh. Yeah. It's amazing the things you'll remember when you're actually.
I would go on to live with that person in multiple states.
Oh, okay. All right. So
it
was the date.
Oh. Don't you guys do that? Like, your sports moments, you equate them to who you were in a relationship.
You think I know so much random nuggets and stuff way in the back. And that's how it happens.
Yeah.
So, but tonight, and it's awesome. It's great for volleyball. Okay, volleyball fans are spoiled by what's going on in September.
Mm-hmm.
All the non-conference bangers. They had 15,000 plus in Madison last night for Wisconsin and Marquette. There are just marquee matchups all over the place. And Nebraska this week plays number 2 Stanford, and they get number 4 Louisville. They call it Final Four week. But volleyball fans are spoiled in the non-con because everybody will play everybody.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so it's basically like a preview of what's going to come from the Sweet 16.
Yeah,
and then you go into conference play, and we come back and we get together on December. But do you know what tonight is going to be at the Devaney Center? I think this is really cool and needs to be brought up more in the fall around here. Tonight will be the 327th straight sellout of a Nebraska volleyball game.
Yeah,
not all of them have been in the Devaney Center. It goes back to the Coliseum. 327. So you have a volleyball program, and no one picks holds in the volleyball sellout streak.
No,
I mean that's an
you show up
difficult ticket to get.
Yes, very hard.
And just think, they played in a smaller venue at the Coliseum when it was a little over 5,000.
Yeah.
Now they're in a place that still with SRO, I think they can sneak 9,000 in there before the fire marshal comes and visits.
Like the Wisconsin game last year.
The 2 fall sports at the University of Nebraska-Lincoln, one on Friday night will reach 400 sellouts. And it's not like they're selling out a 50,000-seat stadium. A lot of the sellouts in the streak have been from 76,000 and beyond. And now I think we're in a range where they're just announcing 86,000. So, but the official capacity at one point was 90K.
Yep.
That's 400 in football, and tonight volleyball is 327. Hello. Nowhere else in the country has that. I think I think we need to talk about that more because that's pretty friggin' cool.
It is cool.
It's my positive moment of the hour.
Well, and it is cool because of what everybody had circled on Friday when we knew that Nebraska would be hosting that game on a Friday night, that would be the 400 sellout. That was the first thing that everybody noticed and realized when that was going to be the Friday game, because we all knew the Illinois game would be the 400 sellout.
We were worried.
You're going to do it on Friday night.
We thought they'd end at $399.
Yeah, last week there was going to be a big pocket. And like, sorry, we didn't sell those tickets either. Sorry, guys. It was a good run, but just didn't quite make it. The volleyball one, though, you're right, because and I do wonder, as this sport nationally gets even more popular than it is, and it continues to gain traction, that people will look like that again from a national perspective. Will look at that and realize how truly rare that is. Because if there was one thing that even for outsiders that were watching the E60 and you were seeing essentially the welcome to the Final Four when they were down in Florida, and you saw the thousands of people that were there just to greet the team off the bus. I don't think anybody realized how legitimate, like everyone knows about the football fans. Again, I'm talking about externally outside of the state. They know about the football fans and the support. I think part of that thing, that little documentary also showed, damn, they really do get that place completely full. But the amount of people that truly do support this volleyball team, and it's unwavering, that if I were to ask any average person and say, what would you think, based on what you know, what you've heard about Nebraska football, Nebraska volleyball, what do you think would be a tougher ticket to get? And they would say football if they didn't know. Like, actually, you're wrong. Because I know you probably get this a lot too. I know I do, where I will have friends that will ask me a lot, hey, if you ever get wind of some volleyball tickets, could you let us know? Yeah. We would pay. Football, it's always like, oh, I can go in the secondary market, I can find them. Or on social media, you got a few people that are like, hey, by the way, can't use our tickets, we'll sell them. You don't see that with volleyball. You really don't, because when people have them, they go, and they go all the time. And I think that part of it, again, from the outside, where people would just assume, man, football's a much tougher ticket than volleyball. You're actually dead wrong. Volleyball is hard. And kudos to that group, because you see the same people. I mean, that is tight.
You'll watch on BTN tonight.
Yes.
And it'll be the same people sitting in those awkward seats
that
are
on
right
the floor,
the serving line.
Absolutely. But it is a passionate.
That camera angle is not good. I couldn't sit there.
I'm just trying to think on the best way to sit where it would be more flattering than
the blanket over you.
Oh, there you
go. So I'll be there tonight.
Nice. All right.
Okay. The get-in price, I'm on tickets for less. If you want to sit on the floor behind I think this is on the bench side, $281 is the top price. There are standing room only for $58 for tonight, $78. I mean, it's your get-in price on the secondary market on ticketsforless.com starts at $80, even to sit in the upper, which is the C section.
Mm-hmm.
But 327 sellout tonight. On Twitter, Jeremy asked an interesting question. What year is volleyball going to surpass football for a longer sellout streak?
I mean, before Matt Rule,
you have to, but don't think of it in the that means Nebraska's volleyball streak or the football streak has ended. Every year volleyball is going to pick up about 10 games.
Yeah, because you play more.
Yeah, you're going to play what do they play about 18 matches at home?
Yeah, roughly.
And football is
6 or 7. Yeah. I'm not good at math, but it'll happen soon.
Someone on the stream will get it for us.
And so, okay. And Tracy says this on the stream, says been on a volleyball wait list for 10 years. So that's the part of it too, is it's, to me, the volleyball one, is really, really impressive because it is in such high demand. People know Nebraska season ticket holders, they for football, or know people that have tickets, and like last week, for instance, there's a lot of people who are probably willing to give up that ticket if someone else wants to go.
Mm-hmm.
Heck, they might even say, you know what? Take the family, enjoy Memorial Stadium. We'll cover the costs, just to see that. Not saying volleyball fans are not accommodating, but what you just brought up is really interesting too. You have that many more home matches, yet they are less likely to give up those tickets because they're part of something. Now think about this too, with what you just mentioned on the price for tonight's game. Wasn't that Wisconsin ticket last year it was just over $500 to get in? I mean, think about that for a volleyball match anywhere. I don't care where. In less than a year's time, you've had 2 matches that are fetching over $250 to get in. Like, that is so, I don't think people realize how rare that is.
It just also shows that in this state, we love our college sports because Creighton volleyball is sold out.
Yep.
And it's a smaller venue, but it's still, Sokol is 5,000, right?
Yes, okay. Roughly about, it might be just a little bit less than that.
So Creighton volleyball is sold out. What is the sellout streak for Creighton men's basketball? Do they have a sellout streak?
I don't know if they have a streak, though, because I think there's been some games in like December where, so it's probably, okay. Single digits, where they haven't claimed sellout, but it was, packed.
So doesn't Omaha hockey have like a 3, 4, 5, 6 maybe straight game sellout at the end of last year?
Yep, I think they did from the end of it.
Around here. We love our college sports.
Yeah. And you've been to enough of these where you can use your eyes and you don't need someone to tell you that, well, it's officially a sellout or not.
Yeah, I've been to a Creighton, Nebraska baseball game downtown.
They did not. What if they would have claimed a sellout for that one? Well, the turnstiles only actually had 2,800, but we did claim 24,000 seats were sold. But you watch what that looks like. You see what that looks like, and then you get the official announcement of it being a sellout. And if it was a little bit more, okay, I get it. You're calling it a sellout, or you use your eyes. Like, again, last Saturday, I thought I would see some slim, but still some pockets where it was going to be a little sparse, like the student section, because where I was looking right across the field is where I usually could see the very top of the student section where it might not be filled in. I mean, that thing was packed to the gills for an FCS team. So that to me is like, there's no doubting that.
That's different in Lincoln. Okay, so I don't know. I maybe I can't count, or to me it just seems bigger. Sokol is only $2,950.
Okay, yeah, I was gonna say I thought 38, but okay.
Why did I think 5,000?
It sounds like a good round.
Expansion? They're gonna raise the roof.
Doesn't it seem like it's larger?
Yeah.
That's true. I've called a basketball game.
I should have known that because I used to do the women's PA basketball when it first opened.
Regardless, Creighton has sold out their whole volleyball season.
Yeah.
We like our sports, but tonight, the 327th sellout to watch a banger of Nebraska and Stanford. It's the end of the 4-game stretch in the contract. John Cook, we got to get to a break, but I wanted to point this out. John Cook was talking about bigger picture future of volleyball. You better be in the Big Ten or the SEC, I think, in that sport. Things are changing. I mean, Nebraska's in a great spot, but the Big Ten and the SEC and the future of volleyball, Stanford's in the ACC. Stanford is, they've won the most national championships, but you're like, wow, what's the future going to look like? But regardless, it's great that Nebraska and Stanford are playing tonight. And I think it's great for the sport, the people that are involved, the fans, that everybody will play. Like the non-conference schedule this year, I think has had bigger matchups, like top 10 matchups than I've ever seen. It's great. It's great for the sport. And that's why you see it on TV more. I mean, ESPN on Sunday has made that window in the afternoon. They've devoted here in the fall to volleyball. We got Louisville and Creighton last week. We're going to get Louisville and Nebraska before what will be a large crowd because they're selling $5 tickets and they've opened up the upper bowl of the Yum Center. It's great. The sport is in a great spot. And then also to top it off, the coaching has never been better and the players have never been better in the sport of volleyball.
Yeah, to your point, 4 out of Nebraska's last 5 matches on this, after we get through Sunday, will have been against a top 15 team. And 3 of those top 10.
It's great. Like look at Creighton's schedule. I mean, they aren't. It only benefits you. It's great for the sport. Absolutely. All right, got an update with Jimmy. David Cobb's coming up from CBS Sports at 8. Jay Moore, Brandon Vogel stop by. More on Nebraska and Illinois as we get closer to that game. Plus, Ed Foley spoke last night. How are we feeling when he says the place kicker isn't 100%? Not on field goals, but health-wise. Jimmy's next on 1620 The Zone.
The Storm Chasers set a franchise record for a single season wins last night with a 7-1 victory over Louisville. They're 87-56. They passed the mark of 86 that had been set by the 1990 Omaha Royals. The Chasers gradually pulled away for their 5th straight win, getting hot at the right time. A 2-run homer by Cam Devaney made it 4-1 in the 7th inning. Then Nick Prado added a solo homer in the 8th. Omaha and Louisville continue their series this morning at 11. Nebraska volleyball welcomes the second-ranked Fighting Trees of Stanford to Devaney tonight at 7. Good luck getting tickets. It will be on TV, though, and the radio. In the NFL, the Aquatic Mammals of Miami placed Tua Tagovailoa on injured reserve after the quarterback suffered yet another concussion at last Thursday's loss to Buffalo. Per NFL rules, Tua must remain on the injured reserve list for at least 4 games. There's no timetable for how long Miami plans to keep him on IR as he focuses on his health before his return to the field. It is the 3rd diagnosed concussion of his NFL career. Mike McDaniel said that Tua wouldn't be placed on IR until more information became available, but the decision was made Tuesday after further evaluation, and thus they got more information. Miami signed quarterback Tyler Huntley from the Ravens practice squad. Per NFL rules, the Dolphins must allocate a spot on their 53-man roster to Huntley for at least their next 3 games. In college athletics, and what is believed to be the first and probably not last arrangement of its kind, Tennessee fans for all sports will be charged a 10% talent fee on tickets to help pay athletes as part of the new revenue sharing plan set to begin in 2025. The university shared the news with football season ticket holders via email Tuesday, which included an impassioned 4-minute video of athletic director Danny White, not that Danny White, telling fans the talent fee and other strategies were part of an extensive plan to continue our dominance in college athletics and build something like we've never seen before. #Nico. In addition to the 10% increase on all ticket invoices, season tickets, and single game purchases, as well as donations for those seats, Tennessee will add an average increase of 4.5% on all football tickets. Hey, this is funny. Talks between Clemson, Florida State, and the ACC have ramped up in recent weeks. Imagine that, on a proposal that would allow a greater share of revenue to schools based on brand valuation and TV ratings, as well as potentially alter the expiration of the league's grant of rights, which currently runs through 2036, in exchange for the Tigers and Seminoles dropping their lawsuits against the conference. This is what happens when the 2 teams stop being good. Reports are that the conversations are preliminary and the sides are not close to agreement. Shocker there. But the conversations represent a strong signal that Florida State and Clemson might have bitten off more than they can chew and are open to remaining in the conference under more favorable financial terms. The proposal, which was formulated by Clemson and Florida State, discussed by the league's presidents yesterday, include additional money going to schools with better rating success than football and basketball. Finally, moments after Jose Altuve was ejected for taking off his left cleat and sock, trying to, he did.
Well,
I get why he did it.
It was off the foot. There's no question.
So that was the Angel Hernandez Invitational game last night. That was a friggin' ump show between the Stros and the Padres. It was brutal.
Just that, and I didn't watch the entire game. Saw that call though. That was terrible. Like how you missed that. I mean, just the way the ball. Anytime you see the ball bounce like that, you don't even need to know 100% that it hit the foot. You can go ahead and make that educated guess because you've seen that enough. The way that it bounced off the foot, that was terrible.
He takes off his left cleat and sock trying to prove a point. His replacement, Gray Kessinger, scored the go-ahead run of the 10th inning, then made a sensational play at second base to seal the Astros 4-3 win in an NL West battle over the Padres. Last night, Altuve grounded out to third for the final out of the 9th, but insisted he had fouled the ball off his foot. He did. In a crazy scene, he took off his cleat and sock, trying to show the umpires where the ball hit. The umpires, offended by the threat of athlete's foot, got him ejected by plate umpire Brennan Miller, doing his best Angel Hernandez impersonation. Manager Joe Espada was also tossed, but he kept his shoes and socks on. It was Altuve's 3rd career ejection, including regular season and playoffs, and 2nd this season. Let's just say Steve Lyons was ahead of his time. His first career ejection was August 6, 2016, which came against the Rangers. Kessinger started at 10th as an automatic runner in place of Altuve and advanced on Yordan Alvarez's ground out and scored on Kyle Tucker's single to left. Got to start warming up that rainbow jersey for October.
They look good. They're up 5 on Seattle. Huge game in Kansas City today. Tigers bullpen was fantastic. Royals couldn't hit in scoring position last night. Left the bases loaded in the 5th and the 6th and lost in extras 3-1. But in the game, Bobby Witt Jr., for the second time in his career, becomes a 30-30 guy. He will be bigger in Kansas City than George Brett.
I don't think that's crazy to say at all.
Because there is the social media era that Bobby Witt Jr. lives in. The man is 24 years old. He is a superstar. Brett had his number 5 is everywhere, and there's a statue, and George was there last night. But he's 24 years old, 2 straight 30 years. He's having an incredible year. Judge woke up last night and had 4 RBIs in their win in Seattle. But I think he's right there to win the MVP in the American League at the age of 24. But we're in the social media era. If he just gets 1 World Series, because Brett made it twice, won 1 in 85. He'll be bigger than Brett because George hasn't played for a while. I remember George.
I did too.
I still have.
I still try to do the batting stance.
I still have somewhere the George Brett for President bumper sticker from 1980.
I have his start. Actually, Reese now has the starting lineup, the little sports figurines. We
avoid crab legs at the Bellagio.
I have George Brett in my man cave. Has a baseball on the special row of Hall of Famers, and it's just George Brett. But George Brett hasn't played for a while. I mean, George Brett, to most of the younger generation, is a guy that talks about pooping his pants. Okay? And they're like, oh, that's the guy. Oh, that's one of the greatest hitters of all time.
Right.
Now you've got the era of Bobby Witt Jr. I think he will be bigger than George Brett. And that's not taking anything from Brett. It might be more of like Royals hit a home run, drafting Bobby Witt Jr. The other thing last night, listening to Jake and Denny, and the Royals are going to make the playoffs. I mean, they've gotten beat the first 2 games against the Tigers. Tigers are on the upswing. They're closing in. Twins won last night against your Guardians.
Yeah.
But Skubal pitches today for the Tigers to go for the sweep at the K. I'm listening. Denny Matthews, this is wild. So Denny has been there 56 years, is the voice of the Royals. Do you know he still has 11 more years to go to tie Vin Scully?
That's crazy.
As the voice of the Dodgers? That just shows you how long Vin was the voice of the Dodgers.
Yes.
That's why he's on 435 before they're back from the last break. It's all about pace.
Jake has made Denny probably stretch his career longer.
Yeah.
Jake makes Denny like young.
Re-energized him. Youthfulness.
Also, Ohtani hit a home run last night.
Yeah.
So he's 48-48. And baseball needs the Dodgers to play deep into the postseason because of Ohtani.
No pressure, Dave Roberts.
Well, I mean,
the fact that Bobby,
I mean, I went to a Dodger game earlier last month when I was out there. Number 17 jerseys everywhere, and it doesn't matter where you're from. They're wearing 17 jerseys. And I noticed last night watching I was a sicko. I was watching the Dodgers and the Marlins because that game was crazy.
Yeah.
There were a lot of Ohtani 17s. And then there was a random Sandy Koufax jersey that they showed on TV, which is fine. But 48 and 48, which is still, I think, being undercovered.
Yep.
Even Acuna last year went 40 and 70, and he didn't get a lot of attention. 40 and 70 last year.
Yep.
Ohtani is going to get 50-50, and it's a huge story, which is not getting covered. But remember, he didn't go to the postseason with the Angels. The Dodgers have a deep run. More people will look at Ohtani, and that's what baseball needs. I don't know if that means that you as a Guardian fan will go buy a 17 jersey for Reese, but baseball has a showcase for Ohtani in the postseason that he hasn't had yet, and he might even pitch as well.
This I found to be so...
I mean, he's absurd. His home run last night in Miami is absurd. He went to the second deck. He stood there and admired it. I'm like, you shouldn't even have to run around the bases.
And the postseason part about the Ohtani career, I think, is one that people are ready for. But you bring up the popularity. Maybe I've just been oblivious to this for the last 20 years of my life, but I do not ever recall seeing even when the Dodgers have had some marquee names and very recognizable players, that I've ever seen. And I even thought maybe as of late I'd see the occasional Clayton Kershaw jersey somewhere. You never see Dodger jerseys in Omaha. I've now, in a matter of 2 months.
But there's a good following of Dodger fans, surprisingly.
Agreed,
I see a lot of hats in Omaha.
But I've now, in a matter of 2 months, I've now seen 2 Ohtani jerseys on young kids. And I'm usually, my eyes are trained when I see white and blue. I'm like, oh, it's got to be a Bobby Witt or a Salvi or maybe a Gordo. And then I realize, wait, it's 17. Oh, there's an Ohtani one. Yeah. And then, gosh, where the heck were we? This just last week. We're out at a restaurant, and I think a kid couldn't have been older than 9 years old. Had an Ohtani. It was just an Ohtani shirt, but it was the blue with the 17 on the back. I'm like, wow, I've now seen 2 Ohtani shirts.
They make a run in the postseason.
Yeah.
Like you see, we talked about this earlier in the summer. Kids that are playing youth ball or younger kids, 99, 7, 17, even 44, like Ellie Dela Cruz.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, is playing in Cincinnati, but I see more 44s. But if the Dodgers have a deep run, more people will be like, man, Ohtani is a freak, and he is.
Yeah.
He's and I've said this: if he adds a Cy Young, the discussion ends. He's the greatest baseball player of all time. If he adds a Cy Young, and we already know that he's a pretty good pitcher, he's going to win the MVP this year, a little bit ahead of Lindor.
I would be more than happy to accept that as reality as well, because, I mean, hell, even our parents didn't see Babe Ruth play, but the Babe Ruth. I know, they'd be very old.
Wow.
I know, hot take right there.
So Rogers Hornsby once.
Hey, so your parents started late?
A little bit. No, I said even they didn't see.
Like, De Niro has nothing on me. Billy Joel.
But I think a lot of them, like my dad always told me stories of Mickey Mantle. Like, that's when he was growing up, that's like who he wanted to be. And I think a lot of parents of like my buddies that are the age will bring up like the Mantles of the world of, that's when they grew up. That was the guy. And so you always heard, like, their fathers always heard about Babe Ruth. Their grandparents, would hear about Babe Ruth.
What did your dad think about Roy Hobbs?
Well, he was a natural, obviously. We've never seen what is supposedly, with our own eyes and watch him play, supposedly the greatest player to ever play the game. And what he's able to do, fitting the profile, putting up the numbers, now on track to get 50-50. Now he's on track to go 52 and 52, I think is what it is. You accomplish that if he's able to get a ring, and like you said, if he gets a Cy Young as well, that we could actually say, yeah, we heard about Babe Ruth, but this is the guy right here. And even in a smaller
way,
world,
I don't think Babe Ruth is the greatest of all time in baseball.
But that's been fed to us for so long.
Yeah, you know what? I'm on a diet. I'm not eating that. Willie Mays is the greatest player of all time in baseball, in my opinion.
I think in there again, you've had people that are still living that have actually seen that and can tell you exactly why. To me, the Babe Ruth thing is more of, okay, there are numbers, but it was more of sort of I won't say a myth, but how the game was so different, again, and that you could probably go several rounds with that conversation. But even in the sport of golf, where I didn't really start even getting interested in it at all. So I didn't really watch Jack, or I didn't really watch Arnie ever really play, even though they were still active when I was alive, because I didn't really care about golf. Mm-hmm. But it is kind of cool to know that when I started getting interested in golf was the Tiger Woods era and him at his peak, to say, yeah, I've seen the greatest. Yeah, you can tell me all about Jack and the majors, which I understand Tiger's probably not going to hit that. He's not going to hit that. But you've got Arnie, Jack, you've got all those people that have seen him. They're like, well, you'll never be able to shake me that anyone was better than them. I think we could clearly say that we saw, like all of us saw, the greatest ever play that sport too.
If only Pop Fisher was around to get his take on Ohtani. All right, when we come back, a couple of things here.
Rice
he just wanted to be a farmer.
So, speaking of a farmer,
I just wanted to be a farmer.
Brett Bielema will be jogging onto the field. Do you know
jogging?
that's a ooh?
Yeah, can you
jogging?
still jog?
That's a longer run for the visiting coach now.
Yeah.
It is. Sorry, that's just the song I have in my head as he's jogging onto the field. Wouldn't want to get in his way, though.
All right, the Big Orange will be leading Illinois onto the field Friday night. What if he came to Nebraska? How close was Brett Bielema being the head coach at Nebraska? We will dive into that, because Bielema actually has a connection to Nebraska, and something that he values. Does Nebraska value it? Also, Nebraska's coach, current head football coach, is now on a board in Vegas. Mm-hmm. Why is he on a board in Vegas? We will get into that when we come back. It's Mornings with Sharp and Handley and Jimmy on 1620 The Zone. All right, welcome back in. It is a Wednesday. It's the 18th of September. It's a day closer to a Friday night game at Memorial Stadium between Nebraska and Illinois. Brett Bielema will be leading the Fighting Illini back into Memorial Stadium, where he's had success.
Yep.
Wanted to be the head coach here at one point. Did you guys ever think that post Bielema, because his departure was a little rocky in 2012, that he would still be the best coach that Wisconsin football has had since Barry Alvarez?
Yeah.
He hasn't been there for 12 years.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Now, Paul Chryst is I guess you could split here, Bielema and Chryst, but I would take, because Bielema won Big Ten championships,
right.
Still the best coach post Barry Alvarez. I didn't see that coming, because I thought when Bielema left, the program was in a good spot. They would continue to roll, but it wasn't Bielema to Chryst. There was Gary Anderson.
Gary Anderson, yeah. People forget
between.
Gary Anderson.
I
there for a little
bit. Not Madison.
The more I thought about our discussion about Wisconsin the other day and what Fickle is going through, and now without Van Dyke, is there many other programs in college football that seem like they've never recovered from COVID, like Wisconsin?
That's a good point.
Wisconsin has not been the same since COVID.
That one game to start the season, and then
if they would have only let Nebraska play Tennessee Chattanooga, Wisconsin wouldn't be cursed. But post-COVID, Wisconsin has not been Wisconsin.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and because I immediately thought, I'm looking inward at the Big Ten again, and teams that could also maybe fit that bill. But the one team initially I thought of, just because the 2019 season was their high point, it was Minnesota with the 11 wins. But at least they've had a couple of recovery seasons based on what their roster and their projection was. So as far as the expectation, and remember when Nebraska got into the Big Ten, the model of consistency was Wisconsin. I mean, and we were talking about floors yesterday. Their floor was, hell, it was closer to 10 than it was 9 wins of what they were doing every year.
But did they ever win important games?
No. That was the thing. There was always the big game missing from their resume. Whether it was a conference championship.
They were as consistent as the sun going up and sun coming down.
Mm-hmm.
But when it, some games that matter, they could never stack wins that you went, okay, hey, they're a national championship contender.
Right.
They're always you got to pay attention to Wisconsin.
Yeah. They're always, okay, and you're right, because they were never considered to be more than a dark horse.
Mm-hmm.
They're never hey, there was the one year that people were looking at them in the Big Ten saying, well, it's going to be them via Ohio State, and they would try to sell you on how they could beat Ohio State, but Ohio State was getting the benefit of the doubt on that one too, which obviously played out that way too. Other than the legends and leaders era, when they had Russell and they played Michigan State, I can't really think of a big game moment where Wisconsin thrived in it and actually overachieved.
So
maybe Nebraska.
I mean, Bielema was extremely successful. Hated Bo. It was the Nebraska-Wisconsin rivalry was about to take off if Bo and Bielema had stayed at their respective schools.
That's true.
Because they didn't like each other.
Mm-hmm.
And what you said about, hey, use that program as a
model of consistency.
Well, I may use the word model, that you want to model your program after because they are consistent. They develop, they play physical football. Bo didn't want any of that. He didn't want to compare himself to Wisconsin. One, because he didn't like Bielema at all. But Bielema has a connection to Nebraska.
2014.
He's got of course, the Hawkeye tattoo. I don't think he would be. He wouldn't be in my top 2 to replace Kirk. LeVar Woods would be the number one guy I would go to,
and then Kleiman.
And then I'd go to Chris Kleiman.
Yeah.
I'd be like, man, I know you want to get closer to Waterloo, which you don't hear that very often. People are like, you know what, Waterloo is Waterloo.
Shout out Napoleon.
They're big Blackhawk fans.
So I don't think Bielema would be in the top 2. But Bielema, he almost pulled a Johnny Orr. So when Nebraska's job opened after Bo, and Bielema he was in year 2 at Arkansas, he was like, oh, okay. I like my athletic director here, but you never know. Might be interested in Nebraska. So his agent tried to throw his name into the mix at Nebraska, along with Gundy and some others.
Mm-hmm.
And then Bielema made a phone call on behalf of Paul Chryst to Nebraska. And Wisconsin was, at the time, they were looking for a coach in 15.
Yep.
And, Paul Chryst, hey, come back to Wisconsin. So Bielema actually recommended two guys, Mike Riley and Paul Chryst, for the Nebraska job between the transition after the 14-year into when the hiring happened. But Bielema, kind of wanted to be interested, but Nebraska wasn't. The people that were in charge of the search, i.e. Sean Eichhorst, because remember, he was a Wisconsin guy.
Yep.
So Eichhorst knew Bielema, and he asked him, and Bielema was like, and then he threw two guys out, and Paul Chryst and Mike Riley.
Imagine if
he put, but he did, because I this has been told to me by two people, that he did kind of, he started to push Paul Chryst towards Nebraska, but saying, hey, there's going to be the pull of him going back to Wisconsin.
Right.
And Chryst had only been the head coach at Pitt for 2 years.
This is a great alternate reality discussion.
I remember seeing I don't even remember when this was put out. It was shortly after the Riley thing when Gil Brandt had something on that too about Brett Bielema's interest and then flirtation with Nebraska, and that there could have been mutual interest there. And it led to the conversation especially after we saw what happened in the Riley years, of if Brett Bielema was the head football coach in Nebraska after Bo. And I remember a lot of people that covered Nebraska, but also more than anything covered the Big Ten, said, well, if you didn't want Bo, you don't want Brett Bielema, because of the similar personalities of sometimes, which you want wins more than anything. And this is where what you mentioned about Wisconsin, did they ever win the game that mattered, which was interesting because in the Legends Leaders, they won two conference championships, obviously Nebraska and then Michigan State. But the whole part of when they were supposed to pop, it was very similar to the narrative about Nebraska football, that you're going to get 9 wins, but in the games that mattered, were you able to get over the top? And what we were led to believe is, because Sean Eichhorst said as much, don't want to be Iowa, that they had all of everything in place, infrastructure there in place for this program to now not only be that 9-win team, but that 9-win team that is now going to go to 10, 11, maybe, dare I say 12, that will be a team and a program that is going to contend not only for conference championships year in and year out, but also be part of the national championship conversation. Obviously, we know how flawed that thinking was based on the hire that they had.
Well, so Chris won, 4 of his first 5 years at Wisconsin. He won double-figure games. They had the letdown, the 17 team, which was 13-1. Then the next year, they went from playing in the Orange Bowl to playing at the Pinstripe Bowl.
Yeah.
And then they had one more year, and then COVID hit. And said this, man, Luke Fickell inherited a roster that did not have much talent on it. The talent had dipped under Paul Chryst before Luke Fickell got there. But isn't it interesting in Nebraska's situation, because they're going to play Bielema on Friday night, and Bielema at Wisconsin, at Arkansas, at Illinois, he's always been about physicality. Like they may not be physical, but you immediately think that Bielema is going to be physical.
Yep. That's his reputation.
Isn't this an interesting how, because I'm going to ask some of our guests today about, is Friday night, or has anything happened in the first 3 weeks that is a change the narrative moment? There have been coaches around here for a while that say, we want to be physical. And we're going to play Big Ten football, and we're going to play in the trenches, and we're going to pop you in the mouth, and then we're just going to pop you again. And you go, oh, well, that's great, because that's what we love. Because we're Nebraskans. Man, we got calluses on our hands. We got work boots. And you know what? We know how to drive stick shifts. That's what we do. And we like pancakes, and we love the pipeline. But then they go out, and you know what they play like? They play like they're riding a unicycle. But for the first time, when a head football coach at Nebraska says, this game's going to be a fist fight, actually his OC said that, or this is going to be a physical game, you don't bat an eye and you go, you know what? Nebraska is now built to play Big Ten football.
Yeah. Yeah. And
where it might have started to change is the first time that Matt Rule faced Brett Bielema last year in Champaign, where Nebraska, I remember the lead up. Oh, Nebraska finally got a victory. But you also remember the lead up to that is you just lost 2 running backs.
Yeah, and coming off the short week of the Michigan game too.
Which, by the way, is the only team against Tony White's defense in Memorial Stadium that has scored more than 14.
Yep.
Keep that in mind. You're over there not thinking Nebraska's going to cover. But that game against Illinois, because wasn't that the bloodbath week or
yeah,
whatever.
That was when they came in on
brought
Sunday.
in Mark Banker and they said, "Hey, show us how you have a bloodbath week."
Sure, that's what they did.
And then they went out and they played Bielema football. And a year later, they faced the same team almost at the same time of the year, a little bit earlier this year. And when they say, you know what, they're a mirror image of us. And Rule had that grin on his face, which he knows something that, he's a confident guy on his football team. I was like, okay. They have taken Brett Bielema, and Bielema wanted to be Nebraska, and Bielema will be on the other sidelines, and we'll look at Nebraska on Friday night and go, yeah, I've seen that before.
Yeah.
It's quite the transition in about a year when it comes to that brand of football.
Yeah, and it starts with, this is the obvious part when you think of when Wisconsin is running wild, but you would look up front. But everybody would focus on their offensive line too, but they had some good defensive lines as well. And so that line,
talent.
They did. And
they had good talent. They had road graders, and then they had people that, Bielema was sending guys to the league.
Yeah.
That was the thing. Wisconsin was churning NFL guys, and Chris was too at the beginning of his tenure.
Yep. It was an offensive line factory too. And I think that's where obviously Nebraska would like to continue that trend of being a physical football team where they're getting offensive linemen in the league. They're going to have defensive linemen in the league. That's happening. But watching the way Nebraska's evolved on the line of scrimmage, when people think of how you want to be a physical football team, I think immediately, because I don't think we forget that we had great defensive linemen at Nebraska, but we also saw a lot, and everyone knows a lot of offensive linemen. When we think of physical football, everybody immediately starts with the offensive line and thinks of that type of play where you can look at that defensive line. It's why I asked BC that yesterday of, does the offensive line need to catch up when it comes to the significance and just the overall dominance that the D-line has shown? Now, that's not going to happen this year because you physically don't have that ability to do that and that's more of a testament to the defensive line than it is the offensive line. But in time, from a program standpoint, if you can get to that level, that's where I think of those Wisconsin teams that were able to do that. And even when we've been bringing up the 2022 Illinois team as well, they had such a physical running game, and Chase Brown was a stud. But remember, even Lovie Smith had some pretty good running backs there too. But they were able to finally piece together a pretty decent offensive line, albeit not what he had consistently at Wisconsin. But is it any wonder his best year at Illinois was exactly that same blueprint where they're running the football. They have a quarterback that's taking care of the football, but they had offensive line that could move you, and they had a strong defense.
I like their defensive line better back then.
Yeah,
by the way,
it was good.
Produced a first-round draft pick,
and that was the one thing that Lovie could actually do. He could identify those people.
All right, there is a nice clickbait article this morning for all you Nebraska fans out there. So Florida, everybody's going to throw Lane Kiffin their way. Why would Lane go to Florida? I think Lane's smart. But
the SEC.
There's also James Franklin that they're going to approach. And so when the Penn State job opens up, Matt Rule's name will come up.
Mm-hmm. Oh. Yes, it will.
This is such a clickbait article because unless they go 0 for the season and they can't find the guy that needs to eat poop to break the curse, Florida State will not move on from Mike Norvell.
Mm-hmm.
But it's a good clickbait article, and Matt Rule's name is mentioned, and odds are out there. This is on Bet Online Sportsbook about the next head football coach at Florida State.
Mm-hmm.
I laugh at all of these, especially the top 3.
Yeah.
Deion Sanders plus 300.
Mm-hmm. Well, but he used to play there, Gary. It would only make sense.
No, go ahead, do it. Let's see what happens.
Then you got Matt Rule and Lane Kiffin.
Would Deion still be victim mentality at Florida State?
No, he'll always be.
Would he wouldn't have his kids, so would he stop blaming someone else for problems? Just curious.
Maybe
Just
start.
asking a question.
I don't think he can.
Just an unbelievable, idiotic statement by him yesterday about those of us that cover sports are jealous of what somebody makes. You know what? Stop the victim mentality. Win some football games. Stop blaming other people. You know what? Coach football. Coach your kids. Coach that 7-on-7 football program you got out there in Boulder. And stop wearing sunglasses that have a camera. Okay. So he's plus 300. Matt Rule is plus 400.
Mm-hmm.
Lane Kiffin is plus 600.
That's more likely than any of the other two.
Pat Surtain Sr. plus 700.
Mm-hmm.
Jamie Chadwell, which would be interesting,
Yeah.
is plus 1,000. But haven't they gone down that road before?
Yeah,
Believe
there's
they have,
no
yes.
way they're going
Mike Norvell is not leaving Florida State again, unless they're 0 for the season.
Mm-hmm.
I think his buyout is
It's hefty.
Is it $72 million?
It's hefty.
That'd be a lot of money to get boosters to come up with to get rid of a coach.
He'll be back next year, but he best
especially
get it
when
back
your
on
revenue
track.
share in your conference is something that you're actually suing over. Just saying.
Also, one other note about what something Jimmy said earlier about the Clemson, Florida State. Do you guys find it interesting that they might be adjusting the grants of right?
Yeah.
What the date was that they have proposed?
Oh, I didn't see the date. What was the date on it?
I'll look up the date.
Okay.
6 years earlier.
So it's actually in 2030 then?
Yeah. What happens in 2030?
Scott Shanley comes back on the show.
What do we got?
Wow. Well, that got a lot of run. I just responded to somebody's email about why he hasn't been on, and people are like, just went nuts. He hasn't blocked me, by the way.
He hadn't blocked our show.
Nor
He's
I.
Very nice to me.
So June 30th, 2030 is when the current Big Ten TV contracts expire.
Oh, God, that's 2030. Okay. Why did I think that I went beyond 2030 on that one? Okay.
Keep that in mind. Kind of interesting yesterday that was a year, date that was proposed.
Mm-hmm.
Also, you have a year earlier, the NBC and Notre Dame contract, I believe, is up in 29.
Oh.
June 30th, 2030.
Interesting.
David Cobb from CBSSports.com will join us at 8. Jay Moore, Brandon Vogel, all on the show at 1620 The Zone. Remember those days when Florida State and Clemson were going to go to the Big 12?
Yep.
That leak that was out there?
Mm-hmm.
They were never going to go to the Big 12. But it was fun for a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
I never took it seriously.
It's fun to always consider what the Big 12 would look like there, what the Big 10 would look like with Florida State, and maybe Clemson to the SEC.
I think timing is everything. There's a lot of movement this past offseason. I mean, 4 teams just arrived in the Big 10. Texas and Oklahoma just arrived in the SEC. Then you're a little late to the party. But who knows by 2030 what college athletics will look like? I mean, I don't know. Maybe the ACC and working with Clemson and Florida State, they were scared by the expansion of the Pac-12. Shane writes in.
Are they going to be new members of the Pac-12?
Pac-12 going to be a player. I got to watch out.
They're going to launch it. They're going to be the flagship programs right there.
Got to watch out. So before I read this email, a nice little clickbait article from Athlon Sports that says Deion Sanders favored to be the next head coach of a struggling major college football program.
What does he have now?
The team Deion Sanders is favored to go to involves a certain program for the ACC. Hey, everybody, click on this one.
North Carolina?
So these are real odds at a real gambling website. BetOnline Sportsbook has Deion as plus 300, Matt Rule plus 400.
Mm-hmm.
Shane writes in to the Equitable Bank inbox where they take banking personally. And I believe that old man Doug would pay a lot of money to keep Matt Rule at Nebraska.
I'd agree.
What would old man Doug pay more for? NIL to find players to beat Ohio State or to keep Matt Rule at Nebraska? Discuss amongst yourselves. Stop by his 2 locations. Say, I want to talk to the manager.
Have a cup of coffee with him.
But Shane says, would they elevate Tony White if Matt Rule goes to Penn State?
I think he'd be highly considered.
Stir.
Yes.
Just stir.
I think he'd be highly considered. I truly do.
Can I just tell you a gut feeling that I have about Matt Rule and Tony White?
Yes. You may.
If Nebraska gets their NIL right, and remember, we're all still kind of around here learning about NIL and how it works and being involved.
Mm-hmm.
They put the 1890 logo on the field for the Colorado game. Troy Dannon said, this wasn't temporary.
Yeah.
He said that before Saturday. It wasn't on the field on Saturday. So there's some people that are still uncomfortable.
Mm-hmm.
But it's the reality of the world.
Mm-hmm.
If Nebraska gets their NIL right, and it's not like they're in a terrible spot. They're in a good spot with their NIL. But I'm talking like they're willing to spend. Right people in leadership. You know, they just had a change with leadership at Nebraska.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, there are a lot of moving chairs. Ooh, Dr. Gold. Hey, he wasting time. Is Trev pulling strings from... No, I did not say that.
Yeah, you did.
I did not say that.
You sure
did not say that.
Yep. At least you insinuated.
But if Matt Rule can say, hey, we need to spend, and they spend, or they get NIL where it stays solid and grows with the new world of revenue sharing and everything else, why would Matt Rule ever leave Nebraska? And then I'm going to, then this is just a gut. And I know Tony White's going to have options. His ability to not Mickey Mouse around when answering questions and addressing things and admitting we made mistakes, this is how we fixed it, and we're moving on. That's a guy that's a leader. And I don't know how his interviews go, but listen, Tony White, if the NIL was better at UCLA, Tony White is at a school which has only led for 1.7% of the snaps played this year compared to the school that he's at now, where Nebraska has led for 88.5% of the snaps that have happened. So NIL is a huge deal with both of those guys, and I think Tony White now uses Nebraska's NIL as an example of, hey, we know we have in Nebraska. What's your NIL? So he can be selective. But this is just me. I don't know anything. This is my gut. And again, he's going to have options, and I would hire him.
Mm-hmm.
Remember, I'm trying to get him to Colorado.
I know.
And people are like, stop!
I know. You do need to stop that.
I truly believe that the head ball coach and his guy that stops the ball, they realize what they have here, and they now have a window with 15 as their quarterback. I know I'm Captain Obvious. That's just my gut. Because I'm telling you, there's something weird about Rule this week.
Weird.
Rule's got a crap-eating grin on his face.
Like he knows something we don't.
Yeah.
Which he probably does. I mean,
That also leads me to waking up this morning, and I dreamt of Matt Rule last night. And I woke up and I had a vibe that Nebraska's going to go to kick the teeth in of Illinois. They're going to attempt to. I don't know. I think if you feel like the window is open with what you have and what is at quarterback,
yeah,
and the fan base and NIL, your ability to recruit without success when you're still selling sunshine over success,
yeah,
you have a window here that is open. Why would you depart? Because I would think a playoff spot on your resume would elevate you from the San Diego State job to other jobs that go, that's the guy. That's the we'll hire Dan Lanning off Kirby Smart's staff to come run Oregon. Just my gut. And I got a big gut.
No, the Matt Rule part of it, 100%. In fact, I think that I know that these two programs were, the example I'm about to bring up, they were in completely different spots when he turned down his alma mater. But I think of after Kansas won a national championship in basketball in 2008, I believe that was 2008, the following year Oklahoma State came calling.
What disrespect to Mario Chalmers.
I knew they won. 08 or 09. That the following year Oklahoma State came calling. Obviously, Kansas was in a much better spot than what Oklahoma State was in, but Oklahoma State wasn't any major slouch.
Than people think.
And they were putting money, and you had T. Boone Pickens throwing the bread truck at him, and then the lure of going back to your alma mater, and he resisted that because of what he had, what they had at Kansas with everything that they had coming up. But also, I think you realize the situation you're in. Everybody just assumes you're always going to go back to the alma mater, because that's your call and they need you to come back, and that it's a no-brainer. It's going to happen. The point you bring up about what Nebraska is doing to not only support football and the student athletes, but to support the coaches as well, I think that's really strong. And I think the fact that Matt Rule and his family have made roots here now, you've got his wife opening up a business in Lincoln. Like, there's a lot of things that they have done, followed through with action of actually making a life in Lincoln, Nebraska.
There's a giveaway Friday night. If Nebraska wins big, you get a coupon to his wife's place, because isn't it called Blowout?
Yeah, it's like a drive.
Don't they give you Isn't that what you get as Blowout?
You get a free blow.
Thank you.
Because you blew it out. I get it. The Tony White part of it, that's where you have me intrigued, because I would
pass him out of the gate as people are leaving.
I would say Tony White is going to be very attractive next year, the following year. And I know this has been very consistent with what you said. You've hinted at this a lot, that why does he necessarily have to leave next year? It is interesting, though, when you talk about the window that exists right now, that could very well exist right now, especially depending on how this season plays out, that would be enough, because Nebraska will always have the opportunity to pay Tony White top tier money.
He's paid really well.
And this was the defensive part of it. This Verz and I were having a conversation about this on Saturday of what you do to keep the guy here. And Verz is obviously I think everybody's all in on Tony White, but and he kind of similar to what you're saying. It's not a foregone thing that all of a sudden this is going to be his last year just because he was up for some jobs last year. That defense continues to show the numbers, but also it gets younger again, but it can be still as effective. How powerful that could be for this program, and you can pay on top of it. Maybe you do get more out of Tony White than just, okay, well, he already went through a couple of interests and interviews last year, that it's probably a foregone conclusion that he's going to find that job next year. I would have thought the same thing, but you bring up an interesting point about him. Matt Rule, I feel a lot more confident in.
Why if you get it rolling here and NIL is strong, why would you leave Nebraska?
Mm-hmm.
It's It's everything you'd want.
And the conference
as a
you're in,
college
too.
football coach in a place that loves the program and loves football.
Yep.
All right, plus 400, though, if you want to get a little scratch on that. We will talk to David Cobb from CBSSports.com coming up next on 1620 The Zone.
Halftime brought to you by Omaha Whiskey Fest 2024, the largest celebration of whiskey in the region. That'll be happening next Saturday, September 28th in downtown Omaha. Also the site of Big Red Overreaction post-Purdue.
All right, we go into week 4 of the college football season. Some good games on the docket. Some matchups of ranked teams. As we start to get in conference play, we welcome back to the show David Kopp from CBSSports.com. Good morning, David.
Hey, good morning, guys. How are y'all?
Good. Hey, as we make our way through the first month of the college football season, how many teams off the top of your head could you say, I've seen their body of work through 2 or 3 games. They are who I thought they were. They're among the elite. How many teams would fit into that category?
Well, I would say there's about 7 or 8, honestly, which is a good number because, sometimes you go into a season and for me, the idea this year was like, well, we got Georgia and Ohio State, and then there's a whole other tier below them, and they were kind of on a tier of their own. But I think Georgia and Ohio State both fit that bill. Even though Georgia struggled against Kentucky, they've still not allowed a touchdown through 3 games. So wrap your mind around that. And then Texas obviously has looked elite. Ole Miss has looked elite. Alabama struggled against South Florida, but man, they looked really explosive at Wisconsin the other day. And then the next 2 that I would throw into that category, probably the last 2, Tennessee and Miami. I mean, oh my gosh, Miami with Cam Ward. They look the part, and they're going to get tested by South Florida this week. And then, yeah, Tennessee would be the kind of the last team that I would put in that upper echelon. So I don't know how many that is, but 7 or 8 that so far to me I've looked at it. And you know what I didn't mention Oregon.
Right.
They look better against Oregon State, but I still feel like they've got a long way to go. So yeah, there's a handful there that look like they're more than capable of winning the national title.
You brought up the team that I wanted to ask you about, Oregon, because I think a lot of people would agree with you. Just the way that they've looked in 3 games, they looked the part much more against Oregon State. But if there's a team that you thought would be part of that conversation, is Oregon to you? Maybe there's another team. Maybe I don't know how you feel about Penn State, but maybe Oregon is that team that you felt would have shown more at this point than they have.
Without doubt. And they did start to show it in the second half against Oregon State. But I need more than one half before I'm fully bought in on this idea of Oregon winning the Big Ten and competing for the national title. And maybe it's just a product of a new quarterback, learning a new system and getting on the same page with some new receivers. But, really did think that Oregon would be clearly among the top 3 or 4 teams at this point in the season. But they're not. They're just not there yet. And as impressive as they were in the second half against Oregon State, it's still going to be until mid-October before we really get a gauge on Oregon because with all due respect to UCLA and Michigan State, those are 2 Big Ten teams under first-year coaches that are going to be going through a lot of struggle. And those are the next 2 opponents that Oregon faces. And so the first time that Oregon is going to be playing an established program of any significance this season is going to be October the 12th when Ohio State comes to town. And so that's when we'll finally actually learn how good or not good Oregon really is.
Who has a more important weekend, Brent Venables or Lincoln Riley?
Ooh, I think Brent Venables, because of the dynamics at play with Josh Heupel, the beloved former Oklahoma quarterback, who, oh, by the way, was fired as Oklahoma's offensive coordinator by Bob Stoops after the 2014 season, and then replaced by Lincoln Riley, to bring your question
How ironic,
full circle.
yeah.
But I think it's Brent Venables because if you lose at home in your SEC debut to a beloved former Oklahoma Sooner, boy, I think that's a tough look. That's a bad situation for you to be in. And what are those message boards going to be saying if Oklahoma gets curb stomped? And Tennessee's outscored its opponents 191 to 13, I think it is. And so there's a real possibility there that Oklahoma doesn't just lose, but could get beat pretty badly. And obviously this will be the toughest test yet for Tennessee. And that Oklahoma defense is no joke. So we'll see how it plays out. But I think those dynamics make that a pressure-packed situation for Brent Venables, especially given the fact that that game is on their home field.
Does the matchup between Utah and Oklahoma State, whoever comes out of this one, does it put them in a position of going back to Gary's original question of how many dominant teams there are? I mean, both teams are 3-0 and have had their moments of looking okay, but do either one of those teams, whoever wins this one, do you start to pay more attention to them?
It would take a special type of victory, a really authoritative, just leave no doubt sort of win for me to get there with Utah or Oklahoma State in terms of just being one of those clear-cut national title contenders.
Mm-hmm.
I think that triumvirate, if you will, atop the Big 12 is pretty solid. I mean, Utah, Kansas State, Oklahoma State. You drop any of those three teams into any other conference, and I think they're going to be pretty good. They're going to be a 9-3 type of team in any league. But are they nationally elite in the ranks of an Ohio State, a Georgia, Texas? I can't quite get there. And so it would take something pretty special from Utah or Oklahoma State in that matchup for me to really start to look at them in a different nationally, a different sort of national title oriented lens.
David Cobb joining us from CBSSports.com. You can follow David on Twitter at David W. Cobb. Let's get in the Wayback Machine, David, and let's go back to the 21 season. That's where we found out about Caleb Williams. Comes off the bench, rallies Oklahoma to beat Texas. Texas then would lose to Kansas when Kansas was not Lance Leipold Kansas. Bad year for Sark in year one. They were 5-7, and people already had questions about him. Now let's fast forward to where we are now, where they have the best quarterback room in the country. They actually have offensive line play. They look really, really good. How did Sark get it turned around so quickly where Texas is not just back, but they're legit, and it looks like they're here to stay?
Yeah, it's been incredible with you there. I mean, the early vibe from the Steve Sarkisian era were not good. Even year two was underwhelming by the standards and expectations of that program. I mean, the easy answer is a massive upgrade in quarterback play with Quinn Ewers, and now, of course, you got Arch Manning there as the backup. I mean, that's overly simplistic, though. To me, what it boils down to is internal talent development. Recruiting has never been an issue at Texas for any coach. What has been an issue is taking that talent and molding it and maximizing it. And on the field, when they were in the Big 12, actually looking like you have more talented players than the rest of the schools in that league. And they always did, but you could oftentimes not tell. And it didn't feel like the players were being developed when they were there at Texas. They're being developed now. And we're seeing that in particular on the defensive side of the ball this year, because the big question was, how are they going to replace those two mammoth defensive tackles who were both selected early in the NFL draft last year? And they've done it really through internal development this year. And there's not household names up there on the defensive front anymore, but there are a lot of nasty, mean guys who've been in that program and who have developed. And that's been the missing piece that under Steve Sarkisian, to where they aren't just recruiting talent, they're also developing it once it gets there.
What is Notre Dame to you after 3 games?
Jacqueline Hyde. Jury's still out. It's wild that you could lose at home to Northern Illinois and then just absolutely embarrass Purdue on the road. It's maddening, honestly. At CBS, I did some preseason win total predictions before the year, and one of the teams that I went on the over with was Notre Dame, and so I was just so frustrated, right, where they came out and just laid an egg against Northern Illinois, and then even more mad when I saw how easily they handled Purdue, because it's like, I knew you guys had that in you all along. Where was it? I think at the end of the day, that defense is probably a top 10 defense in college football. And it's all going to come down to, can they get anything from the pass game? Because they've got Jeremiah Love. They've got some other good backs. They did upgrade their receiver room. And Riley Leonard can flat out run with the ball. But they've got to have some level of respectability in the pass game to keep defenses honest. And until they get that, until they can prove that they have that, I don't think Notre Dame, in my mind, is a playoff team. I think at best, until they get the passing game on track, the best case scenario is 10-2, and that should not be enough for Notre Dame to get in the playoff, given the fact that they took that home loss to NIU.
Hey, why is James Franklin always mentioned for, seems like, every potential job opening? I think he's got a pretty good gig.
Yeah, he's slowly, kind of quietly creeping up there into the territory of longest tenured college football coaches at the same school. Yeah, he's been there for a minute now, and I wouldn't be looking to go anywhere if I were James Franklin, because now the playoff expansion finally gives Penn State that wiggle room that they've needed for so long. I mean, they've been knocking on the door of the playoffs since its inception and had never gotten in under the 4-team format. Now the divisions break up in the Big Ten. They don't have to play Ohio State and Michigan every single year anymore. It seems like a fantastic situation. From what I can tell, he's not nowhere close to the hot seat there at Penn State. I think maybe it's a feeling of that he's reached the potential there, that he's hit the ceiling. But what school is going to hire James Franklin that has a higher ceiling than Penn State? So I understand why his name comes up. I think he would do a good job almost anywhere. I mean, for crying out loud, he took Vanderbilt to 3 bowl games, right? So it's clear the man can coach. It's just, it's a matter of, does he get stale? Does he get bored? Does living in little tiny middle of nowhere Pennsylvania ever start to wear on him and make him wonder what the grass is like on the other side? And so I think that's as much of it as anything is his agent probably working overtime behind the scenes to make sure Penn State fans appreciate, what they've got there in James Franklin.
We talk about this every day, obviously, being here in Omaha and with Nebraska with their 3-0 start, got a lot of attention after that Colorado victory too. From a national perspective, does it change your view of them going into what is now a top 25 matchup about what Nebraska is at this point of the season? And what is just the overall feeling of this team right now as a ranked team and knowing that brand still holds some value?
Yeah, well, to me, I still need to see it. It still needs to be proven a little bit more.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, the Colorado win looks better when you see what Colorado was able to turn around and do against Colorado State. That Colorado State team might be really, really bad, though. So I'm going to kind of, pause on making any broad assumptions on Nebraska based on that victory. And then otherwise, there's just not a whole lot that they've been able to do to this point due to the schedule. So, yeah, this is a showcase opportunity this week for Nebraska, because everybody's been expecting this year 2 breakthrough under Matt Rule, because that's what he does, and that's what his track record suggests is in store. I don't know that I've seen anything through 3 weeks that makes me say, oh yeah, that was right. Everything they said about Nebraska was true.
Mm-hmm.
They're going 8-4, 9-3, maybe dark horse Big Ten title contender. I'm not saying that stuff isn't going to happen. I'm just saying I haven't seen it yet, because I've still got the scars, man, as I know many of the fans do in your market from the last 8-9 years. So, hey, look, as a Tennessee fan, I very much understand the plight of the dormant blue blood, right? And that is the Nebraska story. And so, if they go out and whip Illinois this weekend and sort of a standalone Friday night spot, and then I come around a little bit more. But you got to be hesitant, right? Like you can't put your emotional buy-in on these Cornhuskers this early when you've been hurt so many times, right, over the last several years.
That is true. David, you sound like one of our listeners. Hey, we always appreciate it. Fine work. Enjoy another busy weekend of football, my friend.
Okay, thanks, guys.
That's David Cobb from CBSSports.com. Do you guys think that James Franklin is Penn State's Mark Richt?
Yeah.
Yes, that's a good one.
Mark Richt won 74% of his games at Georgia. He's a Hall of Fame coach, A+ human being, by the way.
Great dude.
But he won a lot of football games at Georgia, but didn't win games that mattered.
Yep.
And around him at Georgia, LSU, Auburn, Florida were winning national championships. And Penn State, Michigan, Ohio State are winning or competing for national championships.
Yeah.
I think why his name comes up a lot, I think internally there's a lot of people that think the same way. Great coach, but what games are we going to win that matter?
Yeah, and that's
all of a sudden there's fatigue, and a Hall of Fame coach goes somewhere else. Maybe I could be misreading this, but it just feels like the Mark Richt situation at Georgia.
And the thing that the Mark Richt situation didn't have, which I do think is going to be very interesting about James Franklin right now, is if they do take advantage of not always having to be the best team in the Big Ten to qualify for any type of playoff, but just being up there that they can get into the playoff. Because if you did have, say, a 12-team playoff when Mark Richt was at Georgia, if they were able to get in, not being the best team in the SEC, but being one of the top teams in the SEC, would people in Georgia have thought differently of Mark Richt? Would they say, okay, yeah, he didn't beat Bama that year or didn't beat Florida that year, but man, we're still in the college football playoff and we're in a tournament that essentially leads to the national championship. So I think that's a big part of the James Franklin, because I'm with you as far as you're not hearing his name that much unless there's at least something closer to the program where in a way you feel like you can do better. He's got a
good agent. He's got a really good agent.
Because yes, his name is out there all the time. And then it's almost like, okay, now you're forced to imagine life without him.
Yep. Jimmy, you absolutely hate Penn State, don't you? You cannot stand Penn State.
I mean,
Penn State has ruined your fall.
They ruined a lot of things.
But they've ruined your fall.
Oh, yeah.
Because
they took our OC.
They took your OC.
Who's very creative.
Oh.
Very creative. The stuff he does.
Well, look at since Kolanecki left, got hired at Penn State.
Mm-hmm.
Drew Allard looks a lot better.
Mm-hmm.
And I look at your offense at KU because I watched the entirety yesterday, the Illinois KU game.
It's rough.
Jalen Daniels just doesn't
Looks
look the
broken.
same.
Yep.
What against UNLV is 50%.
Mm-hmm.
They don't really have a lot of creativity. They're not stretching the ball down the field.
Not a lot of pre-snap movement that gets people out of position.
He was calling the
you.
offensive shots, and now that creativity is one of the best offensive minds, I think, in the college game, is now under James Franklin. I mean, Franklin made a great hire. You could pay more at Penn State than you can at KU to keep an OC. I don't know. Franklin made a really good hire. We'll see how their season unfolds. They were on a bye. They dance a little bit with Bowling Green. But I like Penn State this year. I think I would have them in my playoff right now. But I don't know. It always seems like his name comes up for every job, and maybe internally not as appreciated as, I think a lot of teams around, a lot of programs like Florida would go, Jesus, we'd have Penn State success in a heartbeat.
Right.
So
and
interesting dynamic.
If you're James Franklin, are you sensing that too? I mean, is that a reason that your name does get floated at these other jobs as well? Where,
yes.
You're totally
pull this leg and it plays Jingle Bells.
But to the point that you're like, you know what? To the hell with you guys.
Yeah. All right, we got to take a break. Coming up, Jay Moore, top of the hour. We'll sneak in Brandon Vogel, who's got his preview. If you are a subscriber to counterread.com, came out this morning. We'll get some emails and some tweets and more discussion we've had this morning on the show on 1620 The Zone. All right, welcome back in. Mornings with Sharp and Handley. Jimmy here as well. Don't forget to get to 1620thezone.com. Good morning, by the way, everybody that's joining us today. Full stream on YouTube, Twitch, everything else, X, or 1620 The Zone TV. Make sure you get to 1620 The Zone. Sign up for those emails. Get in the email club and get your picks in. There is a Nebraska-Illinois game on there, so do not wait.
Oh, shoot. We got to have ours in by noon today. Wait, no, today's Wednesday.
Tomorrow.
What am I thinking? Yeah.
Also, good morning to people that are at Epley that spoke highly of Cracky McGee's.
This is great, by the way, that there could be the Nebraska Humane Society getting involved with Cracky McGee's and wondering if they should name a pet Cracky McGee.
So what
Guessing
would be
this is something I missed
the
yesterday?
options off of Cracky McGee's? What would be the option? Microwave?
Vinnie Johnson?
See, the thing, like a good 6 a.m. beer in an airport is fantastic.
It is.
But I got issues with y'all if you've ever tried to eat food from there. Okay?
What kind of food can you get there from, like the box Godfathers? Is that considered to be
that's
cracky?
the other side.
Oh, okay.
But you got to get like anything that they can put in a microwave and heat up and sell you.
Yeah, no,
and charge you $14 for.
Yeah, I'm there for the drinks.
Yeah.
That's all.
So I just, people are like, oh, man.
Well,
I hope it's because you like a cold beer and not because you like a bagel that, wait a minute, that was at my grocery store yesterday.
Yeah.
You just put it in the microwave. I heard the beep.
It was a frozen egg that you put in the microwave.
Also, that was a great announcement yesterday of the food options.
So
There's
exciting.
a nice mix of local and national brands that are going to be at the new airport in about 3 years. I hope that means that, like, more flights, because the ratio of restaurants to traffic, I don't know how that works. But also the ratio of just bad food options in the airport in Omaha, Nebraska right now compared to people that are there.
Well, I got excited when they had Blimpie. I got very excited when they had Blimpie.
But they have, first of all, you go early for a flight. Somebody might not be working. You might as well steal it.
True.
Not that I'm advocating it.
That's very true.
I mean, you
Gotta eat.
You got that Godfather's pizza that feels like, hey, they drove it from the 84th Street location to the airport and they could resell it the next day.
They heat it up.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you're limited. I mean, I do like Blimpie, but I get overly excited to see a Blimpie there because of the lack of options.
So I'm excited. I mean, we're going to have a big-time airport. We're going to have big-time options.
Block 16 being there. Oof.
And you already know this if you travel a lot, is airport food prices are a little bit higher.
Connor paid for his Blimpie sandwich.
Well,
that's insane.
I mean, I like to go to Pitch. Pitch isn't cheap.
Nope.
Pitch in the airport.
Block 16, you pay for what you get because it's great food, but it's also not on the low end.
Now, never did I think in my lifetime it would be easier to go to Block 16 at the airport than the original location, but that's where we are.
I told you, I'm willing to go ahead and pay for parking at the airport and just go to Block 16 and have a meal and then head back home. Yeah. No flight needed.
So that was great news yesterday. We came at the over during the crossover.
And Chicken Finger Guy. Because you have a special place in your heart for Guy Fieri, or as you like to call Guy.
Guy.
So it should be Chicken Finger Guy.
Hey, Guy and I are tight. When he was in Omaha, was that last year?
Yeah.
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 And Alyssa was like super geeked out.
We hung out with him.
Yeah.
Super nice guy. Like, he's real.
Yeah.
He no fake. And he
didn't care that he called him Guy.
Said, hey, man, you should play hockey.
That's what they call you.
I just said, how many people call you Guy? He's like, hey, do you want to take a picture? No, answer the question.
He just glossed over it.
Yeah.
Regular Guy LaFleur.
Just answer the question. All right. So the Humane Society wants to name a pet. So
in honor of Cracky McGee.
This is right up my alley. I guess I should pay attention more.
And I emphatically said, yes, they should. They asked the question on Twitter, should they name a pet Cracky McGee? And I said, yes, they should.
How about like what your experience at Cracky McGee's has been? Okay, that's what you name. Like, you'd get a dog and you name it. You'd name it Befuddled.
I mean, it's always crowded.
What about a dog that's named Out Cold?
Out Cold breakfast beer.
What if you had a dog that was named Seeing Double? Why is it named Seeing Double? We named it after a bar in the airport.
You could have a fun little dog, name it Fireball. Sure, people have done a Fireball there.
I would just call it Wobbly.
I would call it I don't know how you name a dog waiting in line really long.
Why don't you call the dog Tipsy? That'd be a good
that is a good name, Tipsy. I like that.
Multiple songs.
It works well.
And,
come here, Tipsy.
Yeah. I mean, you can come up with a lot of these. Mm-hmm. Smashed, sloshed, sloppy. It'd be like a family of 4.
I notice again, you're not making any reference to the cuisine.
If you went there to eat something,
microwave.
Hey,
soggy.
You know what they call a dog? Salmonella. But they're not known for their food, so that's on you. That's on you if you're eating their food.
Yeah.
They are known for drinks that come at the appropriate time.
Will the flight deck survive? Because then maybe we should get into the flight deck as well. It just doesn't have this fun of a name. The flight deck is, okay. I feel like there's probably multiple airports that have a place called the flight deck as opposed to Cracky McGee's. And I love the fact that what you brought up of how many people from out of town are like, I had a couple good drinks there. Where's the main Cracky McGee's at? Is that downtown or is it more Northwest Omaha?
It's in the it's by the old Civic Auditorium. Just walk over there, you'll see it.
It's probably in Midtown.
You can't miss it. It's really like a hole in the wall.
Yeah.
That expanded to the
Just
airport.
Keep looking. It's tough to find. They don't have a sign, no marquee or anything, but you'll find it. If Cracky McGee's, Cena says, if Cracky McGee's wasn't a restaurant, it would be just a nickname of a person who does a lot of crack. Okay.
I was just thinking someone old whose back cracks a lot and old and creaky.
If you knew someone who did a lot of crack, would you call him Cracky McGee? That's possible. Never thought of it that way, Cena. Thank you.
Good morning, crack population.
Yeah. Yeah. Coming up at the top of the hour, Jay Moore.
We hope.
Hey, it's great. It's great for the airport.
Oh,
it's great for Omaha.
Mm-hmm. That was a great announcement.
For those of us that live here, I don't know. I'd probably go through the Omaha airport probably 15, 20 times a year.
Yeah.
When you factor in some sports travel.
Yep.
Yeah. So it was a great announcement yesterday. It's just if you've been to the airport recently, that's what progress looks like. Boy, it is. Yeah. It is like you got to navigate some stuff.
Drop-offs are not fun.
John writes in. This is a PSA announcement. If any of the listeners have recently purchased a pager, take it off of your belt and stay at least 30 feet away from it at all times.
Yeah. That wasn't a good situation yesterday.
So this is...
Had a pager since the 90s.
A buddy of mine actually had who works in a very unique field. Well, and we did learn that doctors still do use them because the frequency is still more reliable in hospitals. So it is still a thing.
Yeah, that was it was a little upsetting yesterday.
Yeah.
All right, 42 past the hour. As I mentioned, Jay Moore will stop by. We'll break down some stuff that Dylan Raiola is going to encounter on Saturday or Friday night. I'm sure that Brett Bielema will try and light him up, test him a little bit. But is this game more Nebraska's defense against Illinois' offense? I'm telling you, there's something about the home swagger that is returned for Nebraska, and it starts on defense. They play physical.
Mm-hmm.
They feed off of it. You get back a full game of Butler. You get back a half of Bayor, who even when he was eligible to play, I thought he'd be Willis Reed. Like he'd be the last guy out for the tunnel walk to start the second half. And the place would go nuts. Yeah. And they're like, oh, thank God, 42 is back.
We need the juice.
But the one thing I will say, like, when people get fired up and they hear Nate Rohr talking about third down, and Nate goes, and the place is going nuts. Kudos.
That sounded like the 2 weeks lady.
Oh, yeah, from Total Recall. Yeah, kind of. I had to think about that for a sec.
I was not attempting to play that role.
2 weeks.
Have you guys noticed something about this defense, which is good? They are so good on first down.
Yeah.
That's why the UNI game was off a little bit, because UNI, for part of the game, had success on first down.
Mm-hmm.
And Nebraska's been so good on first down that you have no other option but to throw the ball on second or third down. Keep watch that stat as the season goes on. But I think the crowd and the defense have this relationship.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, they come on the field and we're talking about a other side of the football that has 15 at the control.
Yeah.
That you like all of a sudden You're like calm when Nebraska's offense
Yeah.
is on the field now.
Yeah.
Now when the defense comes out, man, you get jacked up. There's a whole different vibe. But look up stats or watch this on Friday night. Nebraska's ability on defense to control first down has been great and will be a huge key moving forward. As they screw you in second and third down when you got, oh man, I guess we got to throw the football because we only got 1 or 2 yards, and now all of a sudden it's 2nd and 8 that turns into 3rd and 6.
Yeah. And again, the first drive for Northern Iowa was I don't even know. I'd have to go back and maybe this is what you're alluding to, that they did have a lot of success on first down in that drive, but it was the third down conversions. But because some of those conversions were like 3rd and 6, 3rd and 7 that they were able to convert. And Tony White talked about it yesterday, but what we all saw, it wasn't necessarily that Nebraska wasn't in position to make the play initially. That's where, again, the missed tackles and just being a little bit off.
They were leaky against Northern Iowa
being a little bit
certain
off.
situations.
Yeah.
But nothing. The yards after contact were pretty big.
Mm-hmm.
And the 1 to 2 yard carry turned into 3 to 4.
Yep.
Which was not happening in the first 2 games.
No. But
you also didn't have first 2 games, have to be fair here, weren't 2 teams that make a living on running the football.
Very true. I mean, and it's something that you're going to see a lot of teams in the Big Ten at least try to establish as well. The other part that I've noticed, and whether being at the game last week or just watching on TV, when you watch that defense and know what they're capable of, and now that they're still on the plus side when it comes to turnovers, so you're getting some picks as well, you just feel something big's going to happen with that defense. That's also that feeling when you know you can trust your defense is, even if you do give up the occasional first down here and there, that every level of that defense is capable of making a huge play that could just absolutely change the momentum of the game. And how many times can we say we could trust the defense to do that? Maybe to hold strong, maybe to keep them out of the end zone, but to actually make plays where they're wrecking a game. Like, that's how I feel about this defense.
And a lot of people now are into the mode of wreck players, injure players.
Oh, I didn't say that. That happens, then that's just the sport of football.
Glory days, it was a body bag game.
Mm-hmm.
Guys were being helped off the field, had broken bones.
You bring a little bit of that back, though, you know what the impact is. I mean, and that's the thing is, those guys.
If you say you're going to play physical,
you're going
and the other team doesn't feel it,
yeah, you're going to pop some people. And if they're not coming, if they're not limping off the field, and this is always the good sign of when. Okay, great example. The 2018-2019 Illinois team, because they're playing Illinois this week. I remember a lot of people after that 2019 game, a lot of the Nebraska players are saying they were still feeling the effects of that game because Illinois was extremely physical in that game. So if you are having some of the lasting effects on Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, and those teams are having some sluggish practices after they play you, again, you know you've had that imprint on them. That's a great sign too. So even if they're not getting injured in the game, they're feeling it. It's officially the most wonderful time of year, Vallis season. Vallis is open now through November 3rd. Has family fun you know and love, including new rides this year. Freya's Egg Spinners and Tim's Runaway Grain Train. Don't forget about the delicious foods like fresh pies, caramel apples, kettle corn, turkey legs, and more. Listen to the Cotter Happer Show every day for your chance to win a pair of passes.
I saw they put in a new rule out there at Vallis, which
like a Matt Rule
1620
sculpture?
The Zone and Vallis are brothers in arms. You have to have a chaperone after 4.
Don't we all?
You don't have to worry about the pack of teens that are coming to steal your turkey leg.
They do that? You're just in the middle of putting the turkey leg in your mouth. All of a sudden, kid just yanks it from you.
I don't know. Apparently, they're just
darn MTV.
Like, are people just dropping their kids off at Vallis?
In my day, it was the mall.
Maybe. Yeah. Maybe poll question: is Vallis the new mall?
Okay.
I don't know about that.
I don't know if that was happening. I mean, something led to this. If you got to go as far as, because isn't it the whole thing with like gas stations near high schools too? Like it's like 2 in and 2 out, or you can't go in without an adult.
Go over by West Side, like you go to that Dunkin' Donuts on 90th.
Oh yeah, the Dunkin' Donuts.
There can only be 2 students in there at a time.
Yeah.
So the Starbucks that's across the store now it's Saddle Creek Breakfast Club.
Mm-hmm.
But the Starbucks that was in there, they put up a sign. Like no more than like 2 students from West Side could be in there at one time.
I would love to know if it was followed.
But any other school.
And if the Starbucks employees executed it well, if like a third crept in there, like, nope, get back out there.
I know the Dunkin', because I've been in there when the kids come from West Side Middle.
Yeah.
There's like somebody that's in charge.
That's good.
Like, get out, no loitering.
You get line duty today?
But I think that Vallis will be packed. Well, I looked at the weather on Saturday. No game.
Yeah.
I'm sure people will be there.
Oh, yeah.
It's supposed to be cooler.
Oh, all right. Just know that, you don't have to worry about those packs of teens that are bumping you out of watching the pig race.
Mm-hmm. Someone says on the stream, PWP fan says, people definitely drop kids off at Vallis. And he said, it's because kids steal.
What does this mean for Vallis?
Damn kids! Quit taking our pumpkins. Kids steal.
Man, times have changed.
I mean, that's just kind of a broad generalization, but okay.
So you don't want them anymore.
Yeah, no.
So you just drop off at Vallis.
Yeah, you're like, all right, I don't want them.
Well, now he won't be bitching to have us take him there this
We
weekend.
need chaperones. These damn kids are show up and steal. Gosh, what is wrong with the youth of America these days?
You should be taking notes, Nick. I mean, that's going to be you in about 14, 15
probably
years.
Surprised. It's one of the most popular attractions of the state of Nebraska.
Yeah.
I'm surprised this hasn't been instituted before.
Maybe it's become a lot more influx of kids with no supervision.
What they really should do is they should make kids that are on leashes.
That exists, by the way.
Oh
yeah.
Every time I see it, I have to comment.
Yeah, it's weird. It's really weird.
But when you think about it,
if you've got to put your kid on a leash, maybe you just shouldn't be at that place.
I put my kid
maybe
on
you
a
just
leash.
shouldn't be out in public if you don't. You got to literally put your kid on a leash.
Let's go over to Westroads during the afternoon.
That's a good point.
Just so bizarre.
Clint writes in, I believe the Blimpies at Epley is the only one left in the city. So once the new updates are finalized, they will close Blimpies. It will be the end of a once thriving sandwich chain in Omaha.
Is that so that is the only one?
There is one in Council Bluffs.
Okay. Oh yeah, it's right. Isn't it off Broadway?
Right. Mm-hmm. Polls up on our Twitter page.
I love Blimpie.
We'll get some answers for you, Nick.
Not for $20 though.
Well, Blimpies is going away in the city of Omaha. Little King is coming back.
Little King is good.
I've never been there.
Yeah, Little King is.
You should go there.
They got a nice place down on
right of Dodge. Yeah, is that new one? They just redid that, or no? They built that one, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Get a royal treat. You'll like it. It's good.
That's what
I know. It's not the first time I've been told that.
I can see the wheels spinning.
Where was the first time you were told that?
Which time?
Do tell.
In a dingy hotel in Dodge City, Kansas.
Sunflowers.
It happens. Jay Moore.
Smell of money.
Stop by the program next. We got a full breakdown on Northern Iowa and what's ahead for Nebraska and Illinois coming up on Friday night at Memorial Stadium. We kick off the Big Ten season. Don't forget, John and Josh have the pregame show. They've also got passes to give away to the Blur tailgate party, which if it's anything like the Colorado game, buckle up. And then we will be in the North Bottoms at about 14th in New Hampshire for the post-game show. So 1620 The Zone on Friday on game day will be all over Lincoln. We'll be like stink on a monkey. That's actually our tagline for what the Zone's coverage is on Friday.
On Friday, we're like stink on a monkey.
Get the voice guy to do it.
Like flies on a rib roast.
Jay's next. All right, coming up on Friday night, Nebraska begins the big season. Guess where? At home. It'll be the first time Nebraska has started the Big Ten season at home since 2017. Big Ten hate Nebraska.
They do. They
We'll
do.
discuss later in the show.
Kick them out.
But first, we must talk to Black Shirt and the pride of Big Red Wrap-Up. Many other things. Jay Moore, who joins us every Wednesday at this time. Good morning.
Morning, guys. How we doing?
Good. How are you doing?
I'm doing well. Just kind of getting all set up here. So sorry, the headphones weren't working for me. We're a little bit of a cluster right now.
Yeah, you're making me dizzy right now looking at all your camera angles here.
I hope to God you're wearing pants.
We're good. We got it now.
Okay. So, we've reached a point around here where there's some angst about defense when a 16-play drive results in a field goal. And I thought Tony White, he got right to the point yesterday about what he saw, what they did. What do you think, as a guy that watched Saturday night from a defensive mind, what do you think the first couple of cut-ups were when the defensive guys got back together post UNI to get ready for this week?
Yeah, probably quite a few of them. Some of those leaky runs, yards after contact. There's a lot of it. 150 plus yards after contact on Saturday night against a FCS team. And listen, they have some talent and they got some big bodies, and they came in here with a bad attitude and wanted to take it to Nebraska, and they did for a little bit. But I think there's a lot of those plays where guys were in position to make a tackle, and they just didn't come in there violent and physical. We just discussed last week, right, how they've been a well-improved tackling team, and it's all about mentality and attitude and having bad intentions. And sometimes they didn't have bad intentions. They're just kind of hoping they're going to get in the way and the guy would fall down. And the Northern Iowa wasn't having it. So there's probably 5-6 plays where guys were in position and kind of just threw a shoulder in there and didn't wrap up and didn't have bad intentions when they came in there to make that tackle. And I guarantee you, Tony White and staff and that's going to get that fixed, because he got punched in the mouth a little bit, which honestly was surprising to see, but not the worst thing in the world with the team they're about ready to get who they're going to play on Friday and who they got left on the slate the rest of the season. So they'll get it fixed. I'm not too concerned, or I'm not ready to overreact quite yet.
I thought it was interesting to hear both Ty Robinson and even Tony White talk about the absence of Jamari Butler and what his overall presence. We know the type of player that he has turned himself into on that defense, but in an effort and kind of going off of what you were just saying right there, in an effort that seemed off, maybe the best way I'd say is off. I was listening to Ty Robinson yesterday, and he was more than confident that you're not going to experience that, especially with Jamari Butler. When you think of a guy that not only plays the part physically, but also seems to have a little bit of that attitude in a game like this as well, coming up on Friday, what are you missing and what are you gaining when a guy like that's not on the field just with that type of confidence, but when a guy is, and how that affects the other 10 guys on the field?
Yeah, it's weird. I think defensive line is very similar to offensive line. I think there's a chemistry, there's a camaraderie. You play off of each other naturally. When offensive line, it's 5 guys working together no matter what. Defensive line, different but similar. But I remember all the years of playing, and you get used to playing next to one guy for majority of the snaps, and the sub comes in and someone else comes in, and just not quite right. The feel's different. It's weird. I don't know how to explain it.
Yeah.
And I'm sure they dealt with that a little bit, right? As a guy that has some juice, has a little bit of edge, and a guy who can kind of pick each other up when they're out there. But it's a feel thing. I was even talking last night on Big Red Wrap-Up is sometimes the best D-line plays off of each other in a natural way. Sometimes you're calling stunts and games and pass rushing against the run. And a lot of times you can almost show your cards a little too early, and offenses can pick up on it. But you can play off each other and just how things happen and naturally evolve throughout the game and throughout the play. And sometimes that's the best, recipe for making plays as a defensive lineman. And when you don't have that chemistry and that feel with your guy, it can be a little off. And I had probably something to do with it. But I think also, Nebraska's played a ton of guys so far through the first 3 games defensively. And you saw a lot of guys rotating on the defensive line. You saw Davis and, saw a lot more Judy. And you saw more guys play than you saw the week prior. So I think they were trying to get some guys some reps, do a little bit of load management as well to get ready for this Big Ten slate. And but like I said, chemistry is big for the D lineman, and it was just a little off without Jamari there.
Hey, when we hear coaches say, man, this is going to be a physical game, it's going to be a fist fight, we go, oh, yeah, it's going to be in the trenches. As a player, when you know it's going to be a physical, man-on-man, beat-you-up type of game, what does that do to your mentality?
Oh, gee. Honestly, doesn't change my mentality. It wouldn't have changed my mentality. Just how I approach it every week. I prepared myself for a fist fight every week. As a defensive lineman, it's not for the faint of heart. You're in there, you're amongst it. There's all sorts of stuff that goes in that pile, right? And your double teams and whatever it is, right? The offensive lineman wants to take your head off, and we want to do the same. So it's always a physical battle. But when the teams are trying to run the football, you love those type of games, man. It's a D lineman's dream. I know sacks and pass rush is the sexy part, but when they want to try to run the ball, man, you just know, and you can kind of get a good read for it, and you get a good feel for the game, and you can start reading their stances, and you can start identifying plays throughout the game, and you can just start teeing off on them, and then obviously get them in obvious third and long passing situations where that's where you get your butt up in the air and you get off the ball and you go get the quarterback. But I prepared myself every week for a fist fight. I always respected every opponent. That's the process you kind of want to approach, and approach it always the same way. It's going to be a fist fight. It's going to be a phone booth type of battle, and you prepare that way and get after it, no matter if it's Northern Iowa or Illinois or whoever it may be. You always got to prepare for that battle each and every week, mentally, anyways.
The part about it, and especially you have experienced this, when you're able to take away that element from an offense of the running game where whatever they're going to try to throw at you, they're just not getting success, that panic sets in. Maybe hopefully your offense is also taking care of business where they're playing catch up. When that clicks, what is that feeling like as a defender when all right, they're not running on us and we've got them broken right now? What's the conversation? What's that like in the huddle? What's that like on the sideline?
Yeah, there's nothing quite like it. It's fun, man. You just know you can, especially when you start seeing offensive linemen get frustrated. You see the quarterback getting frustrated. You see the running backs getting frustrated and start yelling at each other. You got to do this. You got to do that, and that's you won right there. And they start battling with each other, and that's like I said, when you're stopping the run and it's 3rd and 8, 3rd and 9, 3rd and 10, 12, whatever it is. They're behind the chains and they have to throw the football. You can start doing. It's just you just tee off, right, and it's a blast. You can start getting a little more creative with some games. You start doing some things. You start bragging with your teammates. You start doing little inside bets, right? Who can get to the quarterback? Who can get more sacks? Who can get more TFLs? It just helps the mentality of it all. And been a part of a few games, but also been a part of a few games where we've been on the opposite side, right? Where we're just kind of like, God dang, we can't get a stop right now. Yeah. But I tell you what, I feel like Nebraska with their defensive line is going to have a lot of those games. I think at times this year where they're so good up front where they can kind of own the line of scrimmage and get a lot of third and long situations and let that secondary go to town.
Jay Moore, number 44, black shirt, joining us as he does every Wednesday. Let's go over to offense, because when you sit up high, you can see the play design and wide receivers. And I would love to be in the meetings with Glenn Thomas and Marcus Satterfield during the week, because they must love being on the whiteboard. They ran sometimes Banks as a decoy Saturday night, Jay, where he would run a 9 route, and then someone would run a dig, basically a tight end. Yeah. And the middle of the field was wide open, and there was no one around because they had been running 9 routes that were running off defensive backs. And I look at, man, they have poise, they have options. They have different guys that fit roles. But then I'm looking bigger picture. What do you think is the next step for this offense after the first 3 games?
Man, that's a good question. I think it's tough because this offense has been so balanced. Obviously, I don't think they ran the ball as successfully as they wanted to on Saturday night. They had some big chunk runs and did some things, but Northern Iowa was pretty heavy in the box at times and brought some guys where they're going to make some plays. Where I'd like to see them evolve, because I think obviously answer number one is establishing the run. I think that's always what they're going to try to do. But besides that, the weapons they have, and I don't think they've utilized them as much, is a guy that we've only seen very, not as much in the pass game as utilizing Fedoni. We haven't seen him much, and maybe teams are taking him away. I'm not seeing the game film and trying to figure out exactly what they're doing, but he is such a weapon that we've just seen it, in the short game and some bubble screens. We just haven't seen him in certain situations, and maybe that's because we have Naylor and we have guys like Banks. We have bigger bodies and Barney with some electric athletic ability who can make some plays. But it's hard to pick one thing because they have so many weapons. And I can't imagine you have a quarterback now that can get on the ball and make the simple throws. Right? We've had quarterbacks in the past that struggled making a screen pass, struggled making a bubble screen. Those high percentages throws. That's almost a given, knock on wood, right, with Dylan. And so, listen, I think they are doing and taking what defense is giving them right now. But to try to figure out one thing, I don't know. It's tough because they've been so balanced. I love to see them get the run game established more. We've seen that at times with Dowdell. And again, there's so many weapons. You've got 4 running backs who are more than capable to come in and play. We got 4 wide receivers are more than capable to come in and do some things. We got multiple tight ends. You throw in Carter Nelson in the mix. There's the stable's deep right now, and I can't remember years in the past. Maybe you got to go back to Martinez eras where you had Quincy Enunwa and Kenny Bell and Ethan Carter, where you have these weapons to throw to. But it's fun to see because I couldn't imagine trying to prepare for this offense as a defense where you have some balance and you have these guys who's like, who are you going to stop? Like who do you want to pick your poison, right? And I don't know who I'd pick right now because there's you take away one option, boom, you have this. So I imagine being Satterfield in game plan. It's like it's almost like going to Cheesecake Factory. I feel like the menu's kind of there's almost too much, right, with this offense. And I just hopefully, but to keep with the physicality. Losing Mazuka, not having whatever situation he's in. Latofsky came in and played pretty good on Saturday night, but have that physicality, keep the run game up, and then whoever you're going to take away, fine. We got 3 other guys that we can utilize in the passing game to dice you up.
And I think you bring up something interesting there, especially as it pertains to the running game, where 2 weeks ago we heard Ramir was going to be third down back, and he was. Last week it was Emmett was going to be a third down back, and he was. Are you under the impression that it's going to all 4 of those guys are going to have a certain role given the opponent, or do you think that week of practice is still dictating what the majority of those reps are going to entail, usually with a 2 running back type of group?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think right now, the week of practice is dictating who's going to get what kind of reps and who's going to be put in what situation, which I couldn't agree more with. You got to prepare the right way. And when you have 4 guys who are more than capable of doing it, the competition's high. And you have to reward the guys who prepare the right way, do things the right way, attention to detail, and honestly, don't get too down on themselves or, pout, because listen, Gabe Urban's a heck of a back, has some injuries. But you have to have guys come in and compete every single day. And they're going to reward those guys that do that. And I'm all for it. And but that's the nice thing though too is you haven't seen Dowdell much in the backfield, but when Ramir comes in, he can carry it between the tackles and catch it out of the backfield. When Emmett comes through, he can carry it through the tackles and catch it out of the backfield. Gabe Urban's more of a downhill guy. Dowdell's more of a downhill guy. You don't see them utilize that in the pass game as much, but again, you got multiple weapons back there that can do multiple things, and it's a mix with those backs, right, too, because you got to be able to pick up on blitz. You got to be able to trust them in when it's third and short, third and long, and you got to blitz pick up. But again, I think rewarding those guys throughout the week is where they're headed and where they're leaning, and then just kind of seeing who's handling the competition the right way and handling, not getting the reps and the carries like they like, and not, like I said, not pouting too much. So I think it's a little bit of both.
Hey, let me take you over to the other side, and I want you to go into the mind of Aaron Henry, who's the defensive coordinator under Bielema, the pride of Immokalee, Florida, by the way, where Edwin James is from. I covered Aaron Henry in high school, a little Southwest Florida there.
Yeah.
But I want you to play the role of the defensive coordinator coming into this game against a still rookie quarterback starting his fourth game, but a kid that's got great poise and feel in the pocket and those weapons that he alluded to. What do you think Illinois tries to do against Dillon on Friday night?
Yeah, I think you're going to see some pressure. Let's see how he operates when he has to think quick. I always want to say Northern Illinois. Northern Iowa did it at times, but he eluded that pressure, and he had to Lloyd in the first half. They had those back-to-back series of plays where they scored really quick, and I think he's going to bring pressure. Defense is they have some guys who can rush. But see how he operates in quick, and when he has to think quickly and get the ball in his hands as quick as possible to limit big plays. The big plays have been big for this offense. They've been able to score quick at times, but let's see how the young kid functions when they're bringing 5, they're bringing 6, they're bringing 7, right? And who are his options to dump off to? And I think they're going to come in here and try to dictate how they want to operate, not sit back there and see how Nebraska's going to operate. They're going to want to dictate and get to Dillon early and often. And just to speed up his mental process, get him uncomfortable, get him out of the pocket so he limits what side of the field he's able to operate in, and see how the young man can think on his feet and think under duress, because we haven't seen it. We've seen it at times, but I tell you what, we've seen Dillon be able to step in the pocket and dice some guys up, but we haven't seen teams really get after him with natural pass rush and then bring in a couple extra guys. So I think, early and often they're going to try to dictate and bring extra guys and see how the young guy can think and process under pressure.
And he talks a lot about his eyes downfield. And Jay, if in the early stages of watching Dylan Ryle, the thing that has shown up a lot, not just the calmness, we know the arm strength, but his ability to look off a defender, even when he is moving out of the pocket. And you saw a little bit of that in Colorado game, but also last week too. As a defender, when you're beating your man and you're getting to where you need to be, what is the most frustrating thing when a quarterback is still able to beat you just with what he's doing? I mean, is it just God-given accuracy, or is it that part of what he's using above his shoulders, his head, his ability to look off defenders and still get that throw there?
Yeah, it's a nice mix of both. I remember that throw he made to Borkacher, and he's done this multiple times this year in the Colorado game. So I broke it down in a bigger wrap up. It was a seam pass on third and long, on like 3rd and 24, and they pick up the first down. You see him look. You can see the stripe of his helmet looking left,
right,
and holding that safety there to open up that gap for Borkacher to get back into. But if it wasn't there, then he had, I think, Ramir Emmett was coming out of the backfield. Would that force the linebacker to kind of step up? But just playing with your eyes as a defender, now you're taught. You're always, for the majority of the time, when you're in zone coverage, you always read the eyes of the quarterback. They're saying the eyes are going to take you wherever he's going to go. And that's why quarterbacks are taught to look guys off and set guys up with their eyes. But you have to trust their eyes for the most part. You can't really look at the routes too much, and because you can get too tied up and get confused in the back end. But his ability to play with his head and what's above his shoulders is really important. I think he sets it up. He knows he's so good at understanding coverages and reading them, so he knows where they're threatened, and he knows to try to set them up to try to get it on the backside. But again, it's his ability to make a throw. I mean, if there's any knock I have on Dillon is sometimes he puts too much air on the ball. I'd like to see him kind of get it in there a little more quickly sometimes. But still, his ability to put it where his guys can only catch it is awesome. But also his poise in the pocket. So many young guys are when they feel pressure off the edge, they'll scramble outside. His ability to step up, even on that throw to Borkature, Corcoran got beat on the edge, and the guy almost got there. I mean, just a half second earlier, that ball's getting knocked out of Dylan's hand. But his ability just to step up and put that thing on the money and over the linebacker's head was, I mean, that's a big time throw, and it's fun to watch, man. It's fun to finally have a guy back there that's able to do these things and make these kind of throws. And he's, like I said, he's 19 going on 38. Seems like back there, and it's a pleasure.
Absolutely, it's always a pleasure to speak with you. Have a great rest of the week. Enjoy Friday night, and as always, we enjoy your work not only with us but also on Tuesdays with Michael and the crew.
All right, thanks, boys. We'll talk to you next week.
It's Jay Moore, Black Shirt. You can find him on Tuesdays on Big Red Wrap Up, and then he comes on and disses on what goes on behind the scenes of Big Red Wrap Up on Wednesdays on the show. That's on the extra podcast of Mornings with Sharp and Handley.
That's the unfiltered one. Yeah.
Got to get better at deeper crossing routes. A couple of balls have been underthrown of late. I'm not going to nitpick. There's another subtle thing about his command is look at Nebraska's 2-minute offense at the end of the first half, the last 3 weeks, 3 weeks of the season.
Been able to move, been able to have a little freedom with it too. And again, it just, that's the thing that's been impressive. And this is where the coaching staff has, when they said it early in the year, when Matt Rule said, we're not going to handle him like a true freshman, ease him into things. You've now had 3 weeks in a row examples of, there you go. This is how much we trust this guy. And look at how the offense moves too. We're going to say it over and over and over again, but the way he's different, but the way that this offense is different with just these simple concepts in the passing game that he makes those throws. And for me, that you almost are tempted to look at a couple of games from last year to see really how good you do have it when it does come to that, because he does make those plays, but they trust him too. And not just the coaching staff, but the people around him as well. That personnel trusts them.
Look at the quarterback position last year in Champaign, and the quarterback position that'll be playing on Friday night against that team from Champaign. Brandon Vogel from counterread.com. We'll stop by before we are out of here to the crossover. That's still to come on Mornings with Sharp and Handley on 1620 The Zone.
Win your way into a Blur tailgate party this Friday in Lincoln. Watch 1620, the pregame with John, Josh, and Nick live from the Blur tailgate party. Blur tailgate and Lot 7 opens up at 1 p.m. And listen to Unsportsmanlike Conduct today for your chance to win.
All right, so the discussion yesterday about Tennessee and their surcharge on tickets. I think I heard most people yesterday that were like, hey, this is great. I want to hear from people that have skin in the game. Those of us that are season ticket holders, we look at it a little bit differently.
By the way, someone very close to my family agreed with you too, said that they are, she said, I agree with your co-host. They are very, very taxed already.
Well,
I thought that was Reese who agreed.
No,
hey,
he would too.
Look in the mirror here. And I support 2 NILs, but I also support 6 season tickets that go along with the face value on the tickets, and then on top of that, the PSL. Okay, so it's
not a pumpkin spice latte,
but I'm not complaining. I have the means to do it, and I've had them for a long time. But it's already supporting, and people already support NIL. Hell, even if I don't support NIL, I'm crushing some cross-strain Cornhead Lager on the weekends. I'm doing my part.
Yeah, that is true.
Delicious, guys.
But I think you have to, when something like this is proposed and you start going, well, Nebraska, why did Nebraska? Ask the people that have skin in the game, and they are the season ticket holders. I'm not saying that people are going to be vehemently opposed, but we're already heavily involved, and now you're adding another surcharge. If this would ever happen, could be a little bit at Nebraska, but what Tennessee did, they had to be creative. And it's more on the revenue sharing than the NIL. I mean, you have to explain it so people understand. And there will be people that will be, okay, does this work at Tennessee? Could it work at our place?
Right.
It only works at places that have passionate fan bases. You can't roll this out at Toledo.
No.
Say, hey,
no.
it'll be Mississippi State.
No.
What do you guys think? So I got into some conversations with After Hours last night about this. I like, do you guys have skin in the game? No. I'm like, talk to people that have skin in the game. So with that said, this is a lead into something that was just announced by 1890. I thought it was going to be a seltzer. When you're thinking of products that Nebraskans want, boy, their jerky went away, didn't it? Pipeline just like the 94 offensive line. Pipeline jerky the 1890 jerky. Which was not easy because we know where that jerky from 1890 came from and the connection there. And Pipeline jerky, boys. Good job on you. So we have an announcement from 1890. A refreshing, healthy way to mix up your game day routine where you can support NIL in Nebraska.
Yes, right there, I would think seltzer.
We thought it would be cool to promote something that athletes have access to and are already drinking. Kombucha. So it is the same that is brewed at the training table.
Oh, okay. All right.
Yep. The athletes approve of it.
Yep.
They have collaborated with Ensign Beverage. Is that how you pronounce it?
Yes.
And so this is the latest product that is put out by 1890.
Have you ever had kombucha?
I have not.
I have not either.
But by the sounds of my butchering how you pronounce it, tells you everything you need to know.
Kombucha.
What does it do to
mushroom
you?
People?
Well, essentially, it's like it's sort of a tea drink.
Okay.
Yeah.
I like me some sweet tea.
And it's supposed to be something that really essentially gets rid of any type of bacteria. Like it
so does whiskey.
Clears you out a little bit.
So it's like a cleanse?
Whiskey
I mean, a cleanse without maybe the necessary time spent on the toilet. But yes, it's supposed to be, it flushes antioxidants and stuff like that.
I don't want to drink this on game day.
So yeah, I mean, it's something that, it's going to stay in your system. It's not going to create more traffic in the bathroom necessarily. It's essentially very healthy black tea.
So they're not really talking to me. They're not trying to sell this to me.
Or me.
They're doing it for athletes.
Yeah.
Because I think it's a big deal if this is at the training table in Nebraska and you're like, hey, the athletes approve of it. I'm an athlete.
Mm-hmm.
maybe I should try this.
Or
Say
for
the Cornhead Lager.
And you see this where there's a lot of people that even of our age, like in their 40s, that are always looking for
the next
way.
thing.
Yeah, the next thing.
Fountain of youth.
Shout out Celsius.
But
That's apparently
ways,
the big deal now.
Yeah, ways to stay up to date on being as healthy as they possibly can. Now, as far as a tailgate, am I drinking kombucha? No, I
So
wouldn't
if I
think
drink
so.
this, will I get a body like Dylan? That's my question.
They should just call it Body by Dylan.
So
And
this
Body
is
by
the
15.
latest thing that's been announced
Sold separately
in their NIL.
Which has got to be really unique. I can't imagine that there are a lot of programs. Which I see the connection there, or what could be attractive about it is this is coming straight from the trading table from the athletes. So I see kind of like okay, you got to follow me on this one. Kind of like the practice, you're giving the access that you don't normally get. Now you're getting a product that you don't normally get that the players do. So they're creating a unique experience.
Once you read Fremont Fred's tweet.
Oh boy! Anytime you tell me to read it, it's usually because
it's not coming up on my phone.
It's like,
wow, Jimmy, how old are you? You sound like my grandpa.
Yeah,
I might have to clean it up a little bit. But he says it tastes like a urine sifted through a sock that was used as a.
There's nothing wrong
certain
with that.
thing.
Nothing wrong with a
worn
love toy.
all day in a sweaty shoe. Not a really
Fred's
big
a man of the
ringing-
people.
Apparently, Fred has had kombucha before. I mean, he could tell me that, and I'd say, "Oh, is that how it tastes?" I've never had kombucha, but I had to ask about it because my wife had it a few times and likes kombucha.
Well, I'd heard that they had a seltzer that was in the mix, and that's maybe what the announcement was today. But instead, it's new. I mean,
yeah,
I haven't heard anybody else.
Can't wait for the juice box.
No,
I got to imagine like people in
like
Auburn,
this-
Alabama are like the Auburn Collective, like the Eagle Fly Collective of Auburn University.
They got kombucha. Yeah, I know. I feel like I'm generalizing again. I did that earlier. I should
We got
be doing
light
that,
beer
but,
here.
Yeah.
Okay.
I don't think they have that.
I think if they
maybe they do.
If they promote this to fellow athletes, hey, drink this and you'll look like Ty Robinson.
Yeah, like
sell out.
Is there going to be like a label of like showing Nash just pounding one, like just chugging one? Like, ooh,
To
Nash
be
drinks it.
fair, there are
I'll
things
take
we
one.
can drink that'll make us look like them minus the muscle.
If you want to look like an offensive lineman at Nebraska from 10 years ago, don't drink this. You want to look like Ty Robinson? Drink this. I just did their marketing for them because we can relate. People forget, but it will always live on the internet where Brandon Vogel does most of his best work. He'll join us next on 1620 The Zone. All right, we always look forward to our chats with our good friend Brandon Vogel from counterread.com. And if you are not subscribing to counterread.com, when 6 a.m. rolls around, I don't know what to tell you. Another fantastic email this morning. And we welcome in the guy that is behind that email, Brandon Vogel, the pride of Hemingford, joins us. Good morning.
Good morning, guys.
Hey, so someone Saturday in Lincoln came up to me, and they never gave me their name, but they said, man, I enjoy that you guys have Brandon on, and I enjoy his work, and you guys got to know that he was this great athlete in high school. And I said, I knew that. Now, he also said something. Is your brother the basketball coach there?
He is the head basketball coach at Hemingford High School.
Okay. He goes, yeah. He goes, the family is great. He goes, they're all over the place. They should be like in the Athletic Hall of Fame. And I'm like, wow. I go, are you related?
This is fantastic.
Out there, where the population is sparse, you may not technically be related to everyone, but you're metaphorically related to a lot of people.
Well, I'm pretty sure if I would have caught the guy's name, you know him because he knew a lot about your family, and he is a big fan of your work. So I wanted to pass that along.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
Hey, I want to start. Well, before we talk about Nebraska and Illinois, I want to ask you something about the NIL world, and we're all trying to figure it out. And maybe here it's a little bit slower than other places. But if you asked a fan to donate to 1890, and you said, how much would you pay to beat Ohio State? How many people do you think would stand up and go, yeah, what do you need? What do you need to get a tackle? What do you need to get a wide receiver, a running back, more defensive linemen? How would that go over if that was my pitch to you? How much would you pay to beat Ohio State, Brandon?
I've struggled with this a little bit with the University of Tennessee's announcement of their planned quote unquote talent fee. So I guess how much would I pay? Probably not that much. And I think this Tennessee proposal, or I guess maybe they're just straight moving forward with it, indicates that not enough people were answering that call. They asked for people to volunteer, and now they're effectively making it mandatory. And it doesn't sit right with me in a lot of ways, because it's the next step from, okay, there's a lot of money in college athletics. There's the settlement. And the response has been to try and transfer that to fans. And now it's basically becoming mandatory. If you want to pay for a ticket to go see the Tennessee Vols, you're in. Like, you're going to help support this. And it irks me that fans are being asked to basically fit the bill for this, when are these universities at any point going to stop and say, hey, maybe we need to reevaluate like where these massive TV deals are going? And it's kind of pushing me towards a spot where I didn't think I'd be, where if we're looking at breaking off into a true Power 2, which is something that almost becomes more professionalized, if it means that we can stop asking fans to help pick up the cost, I might be more open to that idea than I would have been previously.
Well, and it's not even just Tennessee, but I thought that one was interesting. But then last night, hearing Arkansas's athletic director, Hunter Yurachek, say, essentially, if we can just get 10,000 households across the state of Arkansas to give $100 a month all year long, that they would be in so much better of the NIL game. Again, it's not like, oh, if we could just get 10 households to do this, or if you could give just maybe $10 a month, you're talking about $100. It's so roughly the $1,200. Yeah, math is hard. What that would actually do, it reeks desperation, in my opinion, that even places in the SEC, like an Arkansas, that you are trying to make that call. You've got to know what you're actually saying. And I saw that this number was put out there that Arkansas's, their average income is, roughly right around $52,000. You're asking people to put $1,200 of their money, of what they're earning into Arkansas football.
Yeah, to maybe try and beat Missouri. It's just it's it's hard. And I think looking at, say, a median income in Arkansas is a useful way of approaching this when you then compare that to what the average payout is for an SEC team from these TV contracts, and it's just is and it's early. And and some of these things, some of these moves feel like a little bit of trying to tone set. I think it's important that these have come from SEC schools. The Nebraska legislature getting in pretty early on the NIL front was an example of this too. Like it was an important piece of legislation, but it also kind of set a tone and said, hey, here's a little bit of what we're about, and we're trying to be out front on this. And to a certain degree, like, if schools want to keep up, they almost have to step to the line and do it too. So I know there's a lot of resistance in some circles to some sort of regulation on this, but the sooner I think something comes down the pike where not everybody's setting their own agenda and sending up test balloons on this, the better off we'll be, and the more palatable it'll be for everyone.
Hey, they were partying Saturday night in Ainsworth. I've heard that they party all the time there at the Elbow Room, the saloon there. It's a great place.
At the lodge.
But Carter Nelson got a touchdown, and he's that dynamic kind of tight end wide receiver. But I want to focus on the main pass catcher, or they hope to be out of the tight end position, Thomas Fidone. It looked like, Brandon, on Saturday night, they tried to get him involved early. There was one play of the drive. They went to him, but there was a pass interference. The first completion by Dillon was to Fidone. They're trying to get him more involved in the offense, other than mowing down a Colorado guy on a counter that springs a guy for a touchdown run. Where do you see Fidone's involvement through the first 3 weeks, and what do you think it looks like moving forward as this offense becomes more dynamic with a bunch of different options?
Yeah, I think he's a guy they've got to try and get going. And we've seen him as the RPO numbers have risen sharply for Nebraska. They've used him a lot in that, which is fine. Like, if you can get that blocked, he's an athletic enough guy. But is he most useful on basically a 2 or 3 yard arrow route, which is basically an extended handoff? Or is he more useful up the seam, down the middle of the field? We saw him do that last year, and the offense has changed. But if Nebraska can add that piece to this offense, I think it would bolster it from where it's been, and it's been improved and pretty good in a lot of respects. You look at it kind of in the context of this week's game. Illinois is pretty dangerous in the pass game with how they've played through 3 games. I think one of the benefits for Nebraska is those 2 outside receivers for the Illini are probably as good as a 1-2 combo as you'll see in the Big Ten. Tight end spot isn't quite as much of a threat as you typically see in the Big Ten, so that might be a little bit of a bonus there for Nebraska. But so far, with what the Huskers have put on tape with offense, tight end hasn't been a spot that opponents have had to worry about a ton. Changing that would be high on my to-do list if I were NU.
How much of that does have to do, again, I know some of this is just scheming and how you're designing certain concepts to get Thomas Fidone out there, but also how much does this also fall back on your core receivers, your Banks, your Nayor, your Jalen Lloyds, all of those guys, and how they also free up a guy like Thomas Fidone?
Yeah, I think that's a pretty key part of it. Some of this stuff is a little bit of, I think, QB pass catcher, just consistency and the camaraderie you build. And, I never played quarterback. Who knows how that develops kind of in the off season, but I think there's some of that too. Like we certainly saw last year with Harburg and Fidone, that was a connection that worked there. And we haven't quite seen it so far this season with Raiola to Fidone. So there's some of that. I think Nebraska also has a lot more options. Brett Bielema in his press conference this week was talking about that with Illinois, of how there's only one ball. It's a good problem to have. But in terms of moving into Big Ten play, you're going to need to add some things that you've kind of put the building blocks of on tape. So hopefully Nebraska has some of those for the tight end spot in particular.
Brandon Vogel from Counter Read joining us. And if you are a subscriber to Counter Read, your game day guide, your preview showed up this morning. You had a nugget in there that this is kind of ironic. Brett Bielema had been to Memorial Stadium 4 times with 4 different teams. Assistant coach at Iowa, Kansas State, head coach at Wisconsin, head coach last time at Illinois. So he's coming back a 5th time. And when he was here last time, that was a really good football team. This is a different kind of football team. But as you look at Nebraska 3-0, Illinois 3-0, all of the things that are out there of, Nebraska hasn't done this since this long, they haven't played this ranked team, blah, 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 blah. How at the end of the day, after you sifted through this, and maybe I don't want to give away everything in your preview, but how is this game won by Nebraska where for the 4th straight game, the 4th quarter really isn't much of a tension convention at all?
Yeah, it's a really intriguing matchup, I think. So, the Illini deserve to be in the top 25. They got a top 25 win. They're 3-0. Most of the power rankings don't see them that high, but when you dig into the numbers, Illinois' got some good things going on. There's a couple of strength on strength matchups. I think when you look at Nebraska's defense, its ability to limit big plays and how often Illinois has got them. Luke Altmaier, 10 interceptions a year ago, has thrown 0 thus far. So those are going to be some of the key pieces. I would expect Nebraska, particularly if you include RPOs in the run game part of the equation, to have some success moving the ball consistently. I think that's a big one because that would allow them to control the clock as they've done most of the time, not against Northern Iowa, but didn't so much matter in that one. But if you wanted to boil it down to just like one number to look at, Illini was 6 interceptions on 13 passes defended. That's about double the national rate. They've been a little bit fortunate in that regard. If that continues, that's probably the easiest way Illinois gets to this one. So one of the key numbers I mentioned in that preview is that right there. Can Nebraska defense have one more interception, at least one more, than the Illini? That might tell you a lot about who wins this game, and it kind of includes a lot of the pieces of who's ahead, who's running the ball better. So that's one I'll be watching pretty closely on Friday.
Great stuff. I always appreciate the conversation. You got a lot of fans out there, whether they're related to you or not.
Thanks a lot, guys. Have a great week.
Hey, that's Brandon Vogel from counterread.com. So probably what Illinois does the best is defend the pass. They're 12th in the country in pass efficiency defense, a little bit older at linebackers. Defensive ends are okay. They're going to try and win some one-on-one battles mixed in with those blitz packages, but they do have 6 interceptions. Xavier Scott has 3 of those. Mm-hmm. So will they bait Dylan into seeing something that is not there? A little cat and mouse game for you on Friday night.
A lot of the disguise of the coverage was a big conversation point yesterday on what they do, and I didn't expect Dylan Raiola to come across as someone who's completely, worried or overly concerned about it. But I think that there's a guy with confidence that feels like that is going to be a new challenge, but is also a guy that feels like they've got the plan in place. There's just, you mentioned rules confidence too. Listen to the student athletes that spoke yesterday, including Dylan Raiola, with a lot of that disguise coverages. Didn't seem to really bat an eye on that one.
All right, crossover's coming up next. We're back in tomorrow at 6, a step closer to uncovering what the DeBruyn's kid is doing now as an adult. Also, Nebraska Stanford volleyball tonight, 2 versus 5 at the Bob. Have fun, everybody. We'll see you there. That should just be a rocking atmosphere.
Yes, it should be.
And there will be no, I can't say. I was going to say they are eating the tree.
It's going to be a picture describing that.
See you tomorrow at 6.